remember when Ronald Reagan was shot. I mean,
Yep.
there's a certain feeling you get. And again, then I wasn't on the radio, and I don't know if you were on TV at that point.
Not yet.
Probably not. But it puts a certain feeling in your stomach that what in the world is going on here? And in the case of Reagan, I mean, he was seriously injured. Hopefully, and most of the early signs indicate that that's not the case with the former president, Donald Trump. You know, the worst could have happened because, I mean, if you look at, I'm looking at the image right now. I mean, his entire, looks like his right ear is bloodied. His cheeks got blood on it. He's got his arm around it. It appears to be a female Secret Service agent. He looks distressed, but again, the defiance fist is I think, a good sign. At least, yeah, there it is. I'm looking at it right now on one of the monitors. Defiant fist, the command to fight. That is a suggestion that the president is okay, and we'll of course find out a lot more about that as we get the latest news on this. And we'll be all over this. We have reporters all over the place, and I just ran into one on the way into the building who's trying to gather some information from some of his sources. Everything has changed, John. This will be a much different week in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin, in our country for that matter. International attention. What's the number? 15,000 journalists here this week?
Right. And most of them are here now. This is another interesting point you raise. I've been in touch with some of the journalists coming into town, and most of them are arriving today. So most of them are in the air right now, or they've just gotten to Milwaukee, or they will shortly. So most of Washington is cleared out. Most of the top-tier journalists in Washington, D.C. are already on their way to Milwaukee, and they're landing as this all happens. Hey, Steve, we're just getting a transcript that kind of captures and goes into detail some of what you were just describing. So the shots ring out according to a transcript of video that was aired on several different stations. And the president says, "What are we doing? Where are we going?" He's sitting on the ground. Secret Service says, "We've got you, sir. The shooter is down. We need to move." Trump says, "Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes. Please, let me get my shoes." The agent says, "We've got you, sir. Hold on to your head, sir. It appears to be bloody." "Wait, wait," Trump says. As they lift him up, he shouts, "Wait, wait." And then he shouts, "Fight, fight, fight," as he pumps his fist. And then those commands you mentioned, Steve, they say on one, on two, and they move together, and they move the president off the stage as he then gets quiet and is whisked away in that limo. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'm reading some of the reports. Reporters on the scene saw smoke, heard what they thought were fireworks, because that happens at some of these things, right? People get excited, they blow off fireworks. Then they realize what was unfolding, and everything that I saw post this actual incident, it was perfect in how they orchestrated the Secret Service part. We just talked about that. But getting the crowd out of there quickly. I mean, it wasn't more than, 15 minutes? Right. Everybody was cleared out of the place. I don't know how many thousands of people were there, but it was a beautiful, gorgeous late afternoon there, or early evening. I'm seeing a lot of reports that they say the former president is safe. There's obviously an active Secret Service investigation. Information is going to trickle out slowly tonight, maybe not so slow, given that the president is okay. But as you said, when I came in, everything has changed, every dynamic, security, maybe even the ability to freely move around the secure zone, areas around it, certainly probably more high-profile law enforcement presence. I think that's going to be expected. And frankly, at this point, the rules could change on how we even cover the RNC.
I think you're right. And Steve, as you were talking, I was going back through my text messages, which continue to come in from law enforcement sources in Milwaukee. And one of them just telling me, none of us even know yet how much this has changed things in Milwaukee. We do know that it has changed things in Milwaukee. It's a fluid situation. Meetings that we had during the course of the past week are now going to be had again urgently in the course of the next couple of hours. Can you imagine? There are 5,000 cops coming into town from across the United States. Every police officer on the Milwaukee Police Department and the Sheriff's Department has been told you need to work, and there will be mandatory overtime. Game plans were in place that they have been working on for literally more than a year, if you listen to the Secret Service. Now, this happens in Pennsylvania 24 hours to 48 hours before the president is scheduled to land in Milwaukee. And how does this change everything? What do they do? You raised an interesting point, Steve. I wonder, because we've all been going through security protocols and debriefs, because we will be working inside the hard security zone. Mm-hmm. Is that going to change for us?
I imagine it will.
Freedom of movement. Will we be able to do what we thought we were going to do?
I was telling some of the folks in the newsroom that the area that we're supposed to come in, which is Michigan Avenue, Michigan Street, whatever it is, that was closed where it was supposed to be open until, the actual checkpoint. That was closed. I had to go park over at St. Kate's and walk over, which is fine. But everything is changing. And I can tell you, I came over the Hone Bridge, which those of us in Milwaukee know, 794 over the river. From the airport, didn't see a lot of activity at the airport, but as soon as I got on the bridge, I was going northbound to downtown. Southbound, about 24 motorcycle. I couldn't tell if they were sheriffs or police or other law enforcement were going southbound to the airport. Now, that could be for a dignitary. I don't know. But that was happening as I was going over the bridge to downtown.
Steve, I was wondering, as you walked in from the St. Kate, before any of this happened, I was wondering what our city felt like on this Saturday leading into the convention. Are the barricades all up? Are there people walking around? You were on the periphery. You weren't in the red zone, but you were in the yellow. What is it like out there?
There wasn't a ton of people, but I can tell you the people that are here are probably those going to be attending this convention. I would say I saw probably 500 people from St. Kate's, which is like a 5-minute walk to 3rd Street. When I got closer to 3rd Street, of course, this is a busy place. Lots of people. A lot of people watching the monitors in the main area here, so they were all tuned to this shooting. They were paying attention, close attention to that story. There was certainly a noticeable police barrier, easy to see everywhere. Streets are closed off. Those big metal gates and fences are already up. There's barricades everywhere. There's the barrels and the cones. There's streets that are typically open close to downtown that are not open now. This is going to be a reality now that we already kind of knew what it was going to be or going to be. This is going to be much different in at least the 24 hours, then probably for the next 5 days, 6 days as this thing unfolds. But again, going back to the point, this is going to be a much different RNC now than what we expected just 10 hours ago.
I hate to do this, but since the president's okay, Steve, I want to talk a little politics with you.
Sure.
The president is going to be okay, are the reports. The shooter has been neutralized, the words of Secret Service at this incident in Pennsylvania. If you're just joining it, President Trump apparently shot in the ear during a rally there, treated is going to be okay. I got a text from a Democrat about 40 minutes ago who said to me, "This is absolutely terrible news." He said, "This is absolutely terrible news. We can already see the ads with President Trump, blood on his face, fist in the air, looking vigorous after somebody tried to kill him." That's a political statement from a Democrat that I have regular contact.
This is a special report from ABC News. Incident at a Trump rally. Former President Trump in the middle of a Pennsylvania campaign event this afternoon when this happened.
Take a look at what happened.
ABC News has not confirmed what caused those popping sounds, but Donald Trump at the podium grabbed his ear, and there appeared to be blood coming from the site and on his face.
He was surrounded by Secret Service. We did see him put his fists up in the air. The crowd then cheered, and we watched the former president as he was escorted, surrounded by Secret Service, off into his vehicle.
ABC's Rachel Scott. Butler County, Pennsylvania's district attorney reporting the shooter is dead and there appears to be at least one person killed in the incident. Secret Service says the former president is safe and they're investigating. Again, former President Trump apparently wounded at a Pennsylvania rally.
Yeah, and that was a breaking news update there. And sorry, John, we interrupted you, but that was obviously breaking news. Yeah, just wanted to keep everybody up to date on what's going on. Not a lot of new information there, but certainly some of the things that are highlighted. And what is the big story of the day? The president injured at a rally in Pennsylvania. Shooter is dead, other people killed, and a lot of uncertainty, obviously going to one of the biggest political weeks of the year in this campaign.
It is going to be a huge political week, and it has been, Steve, with what's been happening with President Biden and the convention coming and so on and so forth. The point I wanted to finish making was a Democratic operative who I spoke to said, president's okay, former president's okay, and the images that are going to come out of him raising his fist in the air with blood on his face after someone tried to kill him is going to be even more damaging for Joe Biden. Because here you have a guy who's also in his late 70s, who someone apparently tried to kill at one of his rallies right before the RNC, and he stood up, pumped his fist, and bloodied, walked off the stage, and juxtapose that with all the things we've been talking about with President Biden. This is tough. This is really really tough for Democrats.
Yeah, there's a moment when you see that picture for the first time when he's bloodied, the former president's bloodied, he's being escorted off, and he's got his fist in the air. That is such an image that will stand out to people over time, and certainly in the present. And you and I have spent a lot of oxygen and a lot of times talking about the lead up to this convention, but not from the RNC side for the most part, from the Democratic side. And the political point is a good one. I just got a text from a strategist friend of mine who said it's really important that the current president, current incumbent in the White House, says the right thing tonight. And what are those right things? Obviously, wishing the former president the best and a quick and speedy recovery. 2, there's no room in this country for political violence of any kind. Don't weaponize something that happens every 4 years, that all of us who look forward to these elections, to casting our vote, to making our decision, don't weaponize that unbelievable right we have. And I fear that because I've seen some of the Twitter chat already, and it's already started going into that area. That's a dangerous thing to do. I would caution people. I am so happy the former president is okay. That's first and foremost. But let's not make this more fodder for the rumor mill, conspiracy mill, the hate that already consumes us when it comes to politics. Greg Matzek is jumping in studio here as well. Greg, obviously a crazy, crazy day.
Yeah, great job, guys. Kind of going through everything. Great job as I was listening to you coming in. Really good stuff in listening to you guys coming in. You know, there's so many things go through my mind. I've texted law enforcement folks who I know in the area, and to John's point, his point was very similar. I said, how does this change things for you next week? And he said, we have to go back to the drawing board in terms of where we go, how many people are stationed, and who we plant, which I thought was a very interesting line that he used, a law enforcement source of mine. And, you know, to your point, John, I think back about the rallies Trump has done in the state of Wisconsin recently, outdoors in the Racine area, indoors in Green Bay. And, you know, how many people, how many wands, how many metal detectors do they have at this place in Pennsylvania? Presumably lots. You're not getting close to that thing without being checked, which makes me wonder where the sniper was located.
This is such a crazy time in our country. John, I know you have a lot to say. I'm not going to step on you. Go ahead, John.
Well, I just want to say we're going to get to Wyatt Barmore-Pooley in a second, but I just got a text for somebody very close to the decision-making about security at our RNC, and this person just texted me and said, there are discussions now happening about not allowing any firearms in the yellow zone or the red zone. Guys, we've talked about this, how because of state law,
absolutely,
even though you can't bring a tennis ball into the security zone, you would have been allowed in some of these areas to bring a weapon in. Now discussions are taking place that even in a Republican RNC, anywhere near the yellow zone, that's the outer security zone, discussions are now taking place about banning weapons from that area because of what happened today. And that change would change screening. It would change times to get into the security zone. It would change a lot of things, and it would make the next 4 days much, much different in Milwaukee. Hey, let's bring in Wyatt. Wyatt Barmore-Pooley has been out and about as well on this afternoon, covering our breaking news that President Trump, the former president, has been shot but is okay. Wyatt has some sound with some folks in the area.
So, quick reaction. Obviously, everybody's seen the thing. What do you think?
I mean, so, right, you just check your phone, and since social media is so available to you and it reports so fast, kind of comes as a shocker, right? But with everything else that's been going on, it's unfortunately not super surprising, right?
Did you see it live, or did you? How did you?
No, I saw it on Twitter, X now, I guess. But you know, you see all the photos, you see the memes go up real quick. And right now, just at the bar, you know, all the follow-up on it. So.
Yeah, were you here at Fiserv when you saw the news?
No, I was actually up across the street at Bastille Days.
Oh, okay. Yep. So and then did you decide to come? Were you planning to come here, or did you come here because it's the RNC?
No, we just wanted to come down. We were actually going to go over to the trade, but it was already closed down. We were just looking for a nice place to drink since it's a beautiful Milwaukee summer day. And just ended up here. I mean, it's also cool to see what's just going on around in the city. It's very rare for something for this to happen, you know, in Milwaukee, I guess, and kind of just for all of us to experience what's a pretty historical week coming up.
Yeah, reports say he is fine and being treated at a local hospital. What impact do you think this is going to have on not just the RNC, but the campaign and the election?
I mean, for the RNC here, right, security is going to be completely heightened. I work right downtown on a construction site, so I'm a little bit worried about that, just with all the craziness that's been going on. I think for the campaign, right, if he comes up and makes a good showing this week, the momentum is completely on his side. It's going to be kind of impossible to stop him, I think, if he shows up, shows his confidence, And I mean, you see, like we saw right after on all the videos, he gets up and he's trying to rally the crowd, fist bumping. I mean, you can't, for a lot of people, you can't not love that, right? It shows a lot of strength.
Wyatt Barmore-Pooley from our newsroom. He is out on the streets, just getting reaction, Greg. And this is one of those moments. You're old enough to remember Ronald Reagan. I mean, you were a youngster, but
sure,
that's really the last time something like this has really played out on television. And this is something that even young people are going to remember. We live in a country where it's a dangerous country. We already know that. We talk about violent stories all the time, news every day. That's part of our reality. But when it gets to the highest level, that is a candidate for president, in this case a former president, it just gives everybody this knot in their stomach that says, is this what we're going to be doing here? Because this is not the way we want to live. And there's so much uncertainty now. We don't know where this story is going to go yet. Lots of uncertainty. We do know this. And you had a great, you witnessed something on the way in that we have to mention, because this is the reality that we're going to be talking about for the RNC in the week ahead.
Yeah, just an observation. So, I'm cruising down 94 eastbound, trying to get into our station parking lot. Brewers game is letting out. Some straggling tailgaters are left over. You got Brewers traffic going both directions. And I saw a police presence unlike any I had ever seen before. You would have thought they were leading the current president out to someplace he was going to speak. I saw about 40 state patrol vehicles, motorcycles, all with their lights on, going westbound on I-94 toward Waukesha County. I have no idea why, but I can guarantee it was not for a simple accident. It was not that. There is a bigger thing at hand here that is being dealt with. I'm going to pop out to Deer District. I'm going to try and connect with some delegates who are coming in. Perhaps even members of the national media, get some reaction out there. And you're going to see a ton of different angles of this, because everybody had a phone out. Everybody was recording. So different angles of what happened today in Pennsylvania. You're going to see it. And you heard a lot of shots, right? I can't help but wonder how many of those shots were snipers going back, Secret Service agents going back at the shooter.
Yeah, we don't know the detail there yet, and thanks for that eyewitness testimony, because I saw the same thing in the other direction, going towards the airport. So whether that's a dignitary coming in or a high-level government employee, I have no idea. This is one of those moments, I think, that suggests what we do here is important. This is 620 WTMJ. If you're not aware of what you're listening to, we have our newsroom is fully active. We've got all of our anchors on either on the phone or en route to our office here at on Wisconsin Avenue, 3rd Street Market Hall, our studios here. We are covering this story in a lot of ways. And I don't know, is John still on the phone?
I'm here.
Hey, John, we don't know right now, because we had this well-orchestrated plan to show up for work. We know where we are going. We know kind of the way, the route there, the security things we were told. I have the feeling at this moment, which is 7 o'clock on Saturday night, we have no idea how that's going to change at this moment. Other than there's going to be more security, I think we can all promise that.
I think that's a really fair assessment. I think that's absolutely right. I'm glad Vetrano comes in before the rest of us, because he can kind of figure out exactly what's going to happen.
He'll give us the game plan.
To that point, I was talking to a really high law enforcement source here in the city within the hour, and that source told me on this Saturday afternoon, we thought we were all catching our breath and dotting the I's and crossing the T's before a big week. Now we're all spending the rest of our weekend going back to ground zero to figure out what we need to do and how this changes everything. Paraphrasing what that person told me, but that person I talked to was with their family, catching their breath on this Saturday before the RNC, and now everything is up in the air. And what we thought we knew about what it would take to get into the security zones has undoubtedly changed. What we will see and what we won't see from a security standpoint is going to likely be much different than it would have been 3 or 4 hours ago.
Beyond the security part of it, I wonder if it actually changes the schedule. I started to get some texts and information from people who are attending the convention, some delegates, some other folks who are high-ranking Republicans in the state, and they were telling me that this is when this is going to happen, this is when the speeches are going to be made. I wonder if that changes as well, given how dynamic this situation is.
That's a really good question. I mean, I have to think that everything's in play now, and they've been planning this for a year. There have been RNC officials in our city for a year. There have been Secret Service higher-ups for a year. There's a young woman, her name escapes me, who's with the Secret Service, who came into town in Milwaukee a year ago and has led security. And now this has to be a worst-case scenario. 2 days before the convention, for something like this to happen and to have to open it up to revisiting what we're going to do. And this was a rally where everybody went through a metal detector and everybody had their bags searched, and big bags, we're learning, were not allowed in the rally. They had security in place, and yet we're being led to believe between 5 and 10 shots rang out at the Trump rally. And you know what? I talked to someone, Steve, in Cleveland for our show a couple of weeks ago. It was the mayor, actually. And he said to us, we had a great convention. It changed our city, but we feel very fortunate because there were no security incidents. There was no rioting or protesting that got out of control, and there was no violence or crime. And he specifically mentioned that. Say that again?
Oh, sorry, John. We were chatting in the newsroom here. One of the things that I think is going to be interesting is the next probably 8 to 12 hours, because we're going to get a lot of information, a lot of quick processing. Law enforcement, they're already on high alert in Milwaukee. They're going to be meeting, probably, if they're not already meeting. And as both Greg and I witnessed, they're on the move. I saw, just walking from St. Kate's, I saw more law enforcement / the big black suburban vehicles than I've seen in Milwaukee's downtown in probably forever. So that presence is already there. And as you asked me earlier about the barricades, everything's up. Everything's ready to go. One wonders, as we drive in on Monday from our various different places, and I think there's still 5 checkpoints. At least that's what the plan was before today, and maybe there'll be hopefully not less than that, because it's already going to be hard to get in. And I think all of that could be changing. All of that could be changing before the actual RNC kicks into gear on Monday.
You know, Stephen, I think about, as a journalist, my plan was to come in on Monday, get into the security zone with my credential and my ticket and everything that I need, and begin to try to talk to political figures who are in town or journalists who are in town. Now, my first thought from a job standpoint was that changes all of our job, because now the topic number one come Monday on the first day of the convention is going to be security and what happened to Donald Trump on Saturday. And so on Monday, a big day for delegates from across America who will be inside Fiserv Forum voting on the platform. This is Monday. They're scheduled to be in there, Steve, beginning at 12:30 in the afternoon on Monday for a big day of work, the unsexy stuff, talking about the platform, talking about fundraising, talking about that stuff. All those delegates are in Fiserv Forum for 8 hours on Monday. It's their longest day inside Fiserv. And now, in addition to the platform, in addition to all those other things that are business of the party, this is going to be looming over them, that Donald Trump was injured at a shooting at a Pennsylvania rally, and how secure is Milwaukee, because this is going to supersede every other bit of business, whether you're a delegate or a member of the media or a volunteer or a law enforcement official, when the convention begins in Milwaukee on Monday.
Adam Roberts, our own Adam Roberts, is out and about this morning. Let's get some information from Adam. Can we get him in here? Adam Roberts is out on the streets. Adam Roberts, all right, go.
Hey, Steve. I'm out in our market hall right now. All the TVs around the bar as of a few moments ago, all centered in on this news as it continues to unfold. I had a chance to speak with a few people in the hall in the last hour or so, getting some into that instant reaction, and the overarching theme appears to be shock.
Unbelievable and very sad for our country.
People are shocked. I think we're very surprised, alarmed that the Secret Service would allow this to happen. Very curious about his motivations and what the shooter was actually intending to do.
I'm actually really surprised. I hadn't actually foreseen something like this happening. So it was kind of just like wow, that is occurring now.
Steve and John, as we react as well, also people front of mind as we sit here on the fringes of that hard security zone. What does this look like now? You guys have been talking about it. I asked that as well.
Well, you saw Trump. He's defiant and he's resolute, and we will go forward.
I would expect the security of the convention is going to get even more significant and hopefully provide an additional level of protection to everybody attending here this week.
I don't think it will become more lax, and I feel like it's already, between that and construction all over downtown, going to probably congest traffic way worse. But that's city.
And Adam, thanks for gathering that sound, because I mean that's sort of the reaction I was getting from the people I was talking to, and as I was walking over from St. Kate's, the same thing. That everybody's sort of uncertain. A lady that I talked to didn't even know it had happened, and we were standing by a red light or waiting for the crosswalk to open, and she's like, I didn't even know that. So I mean that's sort of the story here. Don't forget, it's the weekend. Not everybody's tuned into the news like we are. I just happened to be watching CNN at the time, and I saw it unfold. I mean, this is something you not expect. And, to the safety thing, it's interesting that my wife, Kathy, said on the way out of the house quickly to get down here, she goes, be careful. Because if someone is able to do what this individual who is now dead was able to do at a rally, which had apparently all the security in place that we know is as good as it gets, that's what we're told, and was still able to get a shot off or shots off, injuring the president, there's always going to be concern. I don't care how good your protocols and your safety checks are. Do we lose?
Always.
Yeah, there's
always,
John.
Steve. Steve, you're right. Always. And, I think the sources that I've been talking to, this is what is so alarming to them, that this was not Donald Trump walking out of Trump Tower in New York City to a limousine. This was not Donald Trump on the tarmac at Mar-a-Lago. This was Donald Trump at a rally where every single person had to go through a metal detector. Every single person had to have their bags searched. Every person was asked questions before they went into the rally. And there was Secret Service level security in place at this rally in Pennsylvania. There were protocols in place. This was a secure site. And yet somebody apparently got inside of there, or just outside, we don't know the details where the shots came from, and fired into this rally, and apparently either struck former President Trump or struck other people, and then he was injured, but got off shots at former President Trump. And that has people that I'm talking to in Milwaukee in law enforcement and other first responders, by the way. There are fire involved and others, and they are on edge. And they are not feeling like they're in a very good place now, because the eyes of the world next turn to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when Donald Trump, 50,000 delegates, 15,000 members of the media, and volunteers, law enforcement, vendors, and others are in our city.
Former presidents, 44th president, former President 44, Barack Obama now said this: there's absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't know yet exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Good words there, the right words. And I know that just from reading the press counts that I'm reading while you were talking, John, both the current president, Joe Biden, and the current vice president, Kamala Harris, have both been notified of the situation, are being advised, and they will have comment at some point. And I would not be shocked, John, and you've been around a lot more of these from a journalist perspective than I have, if the current president, Joe Biden, doesn't do a statement, official TV statement at some point.
Well, Steve, I think you raised a great point earlier with one of your sources telling you that the coming hours will be critical for Joe Biden, because right now this is going to be Donald Trump looking like a strong man, a vigorous man, a guy who defeated someone who wanted to kill him, and that's going to be the media coverage everywhere. There is no negative in this for Donald Trump. What happened to him today, other than the injury to his ear, there is nothing negative in this for Donald Trump because of how he's going to walk away from this. Joe Biden has a perilous path ahead because he needs to say the right things. He needs to present the right way. He needs to come across as somebody who's caring and empathetic and relays the message that this is unacceptable in our society. But at the same time, knowing that this is not great for him politically. This is just not a good situation. And for it to be okay for him politically, he needs to say the right things. And by the way, that's not just being quiet. He needs to proactively say and do the right things, especially, Steve, as we head into those Sunday morning shows that we all watch, the political shows on Sunday morning, the day before the Republican National Convention. He and his surrogates all need to make sure that they say the right thing.
Great words, great wisdom from John Mercure, great journalist. And John Mercure is covering the story. We have Greg Matzik out there, Adam Roberts, Julia Fellow. Vince Vetrano is en route to our studios here at Good Karma Brands, of course, WTMJ, the leader in giving you the news of the day. And this is breaking news. And thankfully, and I'll say this before we go to break here on WTMJ, thankfully, at this moment, it appears the president, former President Donald Trump, is just fine. We'll take a break here. We'll sort of reassemble the masses and see what is on people's minds. The text line is open, 855-616-1620. If you have a comment, something you would like us to address, certainly you can share that on the text line. Happy to do it. And we'll continue the conversation. Breaking news. Former President Donald Trump shot, appears to be fine. That's all the accounts are saying, that he appears to be okay. There were injuries and deaths around that shooting, which we'll certainly find out more about in the hours ahead. You're listening to 620 WTMJ.
You're listening to continuing coverage on WTMJ.
The doctor's office that accidentally mixed up your files has your social security number. The power company that mistakenly cut your service has your payment info. And the hotel that lost your reservation has your passport number. You need LifeLock because your personal info is in endless places that can expose you to identity thieves. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Save up to 40% with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Terms apply.
A violent crime is committed every 24 seconds. The U.S. Concealed Carry Association exists to provide you with firearms education, training, and access to self-defense liability insurance. So when trouble comes, you'll be ready. Over 800,000 Americans trust the USCCA, and right now, there's an exclusive, limited-time offer for radio listeners. Go to defendfamily.com to get a free family defense guide, a survival secrets training video from a retired FBI agent, and see all the benefits of membership. Go to defendfamily.com now.
When you want the best medical attention, you don't just go to anybody, you go to a specialist. The same should be true with your car or truck. I'm Jim Token, president of the Auto Dealers Association of Metro Milwaukee. When your vehicle needs service, take it to a specialist, an Adam member new car dealer. Adam dealers use factory-warranted parts, the latest diagnostic equipment, and certified manufacturer technicians specially trained on the advanced technology on your vehicle. They have all the latest manufacturer service bulletins and will know if your issue is covered by an existing warranty or if there are any recalls. And despite what you might assume, their prices are as low or lower than independent shops, even on routine maintenance and tires. Now, knowing all that, why would you even consider going anywhere other than an Adam member dealer?
For great paying job opportunities, visit adam.com. That's ADAMM.com.
From big tailgate parties to cozy dinners for two, the freshest ideas start with a stop at Century Foods.
Now through Wednesday, save on 11 to 12-ounce selected varieties. Post Honey Bunches of Oat cereal, 2 for $5. 15 to 16-ounce selected varieties. Bush's Best Baked
Line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I am able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. But so far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that they're thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours. So thank you very much, and I hope I get to speak to them tonight, and I'll get back to you if I do, okay?
Mr. President, do you think it was an assassination attempt?
I don't know enough to, I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts. So I want to make sure we have all the facts before I make any more comments. Thank you.
Are you worried about President safety? Was the security failing, Mr. President?
That is the latest from the current president, Joe Biden, from the White House, commenting about the shooting. There's a lot of, and the point about speculation is good, and certainly we all are going to be rushing to our various sources where we can find out, the latest. But I think a slow roll on some of this stuff is probably the right way to go. We know the former president's okay. That's good news. We know that unfortunately other people were killed in this incident. There's all kinds of different stories that I'm reading already online. We'll pause from telling you what those are until we confirm them in the way that we always do. We are going to cover this story in probably better than any way we could ever cover a story, because now joining me in studio is Vince Vitrano from Wisconsin Morning News. And I don't know where you were at. I was watching TV at the time. I don't know. You don't have to tell me where you were, but you're now in studio, and we're talking about something that I don't think any of us expected.
No, I think it's informative, Steve, in that. I think it's informative, Steve. I was at a graduation party, like probably so many people listening right now were, and as soon as everyone at the party saw me on my phone and not looking up, everybody wanted to know what was up, and I was delicate in sharing that and with whom and in what way. But just a shock and an overwhelming opinion. I don't know anybody's politics that I talked with today, but the consensus clearly was this is not good for our country. And what does later tonight bring? What does tomorrow bring? And certainly a lot of thoughts on what this week ahead here in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin is like.
I mean, I can remember when Reagan was shot, and that, like I said earlier, it puts a knot in your stomach, and there's this sense of uncertainty. And Reagan could have died. Again, very heroic Secret Service, some of which we saw again today. The images that are coming out of this thing are incredible. And to the former president's credit, he was very defiant he wanted to almost stay on the stage because he was so fired up. That's a good thing, and maybe that's one of the reasons he's doing so well post this incident. We're gonna find out a lot more about the story. We have reporters on the streets. We got reporters. Everybody's calling in their sources to see what the latest is. John Mercure is also here as well on the phone. And John and I were talking, Vince, about the impact on what will be the biggest political party in the run-up to the election in November. It's happening right here, how this changes things. You've covered these things. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, and John, I'll bring you in because I just spoke with Paul Farrell, Waukesha County Executive, friend of yours and mine and friend of our programs, and he is also a delegate to this convention. And I spoke with him, John. I just said, Paul, number of things that I'll share with you, but one of our collective takeaways, and you've covered so many of these events, I've covered sitting presidents, I've covered candidates. I can't imagine how this happens, and County Executive Farrell shared that sentiment. What was the security situation? How possibly could someone get close enough to do this, having been through the security scrutiny of the Secret Service, who helps coordinate these events in terms of security?
Well, you're right, Vince, and two of my sources that I've spoken to in the last hour or so are both telling me that they're so unnerved because this was a scenario where people went through increased and enhanced security. This was not a random area. This was a rally where the Secret Service, and we can see it now because of the aftermath, was there in full force and full effect, and yet somebody managed to get off 5 to 10 shots at the podium where Donald Trump was speaking. And I wanted to go back to President Biden's speech because, Steve, you and I were talking about this, and Biden came out, and we didn't get the whole speech, but he said, this must be condemned. This is sick. This is sick. This is sick. And I've had my differences with Donald Trump, but I will call Donald Trump. I'm going to call him and make sure that he is okay. And this is never okay, to paraphrase what the president said. And it's not. And now this is the focus as we come to Milwaukee. The focus is not going to be on Monday, what is the platform on abortion in the Republican Party? The focus is not going to be what's the street fair outside of the Baird Center at the party, and is Ron Johnson eating a snow cone? This is not going to be any of this. The focus is going to be, are we able to keep delegates and the former president and other elected officials in the media safe in our city? Because look what happened in a secure zone on Saturday in Pennsylvania. That's going to be the focus.
Any of us think this will could change the relationship, which is not a good one, between the current occupant of the White House and the former one? Donald Trump has been very critical of Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's been critical of Donald Trump. They've exchanged barbs, names, the whole thing. This is as ugly as it gets. Well, we've had some times in our country's history where it's gotten uglier, but this is not good. Anybody think this might change or soften some of that? If Joe Biden does what he says he's going to do, if he calls Donald Trump, Trump takes the call. Can it soften?
I think Biden needs to hope it softens it. That has to be Joe Biden's play from a political standpoint. He's got to be the guy that looks empathetic, and I believe he is. He's got to be the guy that's seen reaching out. He's got to be the guy who says, I hope Donald Trump is okay because our politics shouldn't be this. I can see Donald Trump, on the other hand, go in the other direction. I can see Donald Trump saying, they want to rail at me about January 6th. Well, you know what? One of those crazy guys on the other side tried to kill me, and I didn't let it happen. Blood on my face. I stood up there. It was a huge moment for me. I'm the toughest guy in the room, and this is why I need to be the guy in charge. So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch the dynamic, because I think Joe Biden's tone is going to be much different than Donald Trump's tone, and some of that is out of necessity.
And you raised the issue of what does the Republican National Convention that we have talked about for years, and really we've been talking about a national convention in Milwaukee for 6 years because you had the run up to the DNC, which largely didn't happen due to COVID. But we've been talking about this major event, which is finally a day away from starting to happen here in Milwaukee, and how this changes that. I talked with Farrow, County Executive of Waukesha County, Paul Farrow, who is also a delegate. And he said Milwaukee is still going to be prepared to put its best foot forward. This changes some things. Maybe it'll change some security apparatus. Maybe the back and forth over where protesters are allowed to march and how close they're going to get to Fiserv Forum and that hard perimeter that you mentioned. Maybe that's something that's open for discussion tonight. All that said, but Farrow said the Wisconsin delegation, the people that he's talked with here in Wisconsin, are still committed to putting on a fantastic event. Not that this won't overshadow that, but they have a job to do. It starts Sunday night on the Summerfest grounds with that welcome party. People are coming to town already. There are events in hotels around Southeast Wisconsin starting tomorrow. So it is on.
I'm glad you brought that up, because does that change that event that's planned? That's a big, big deal. That's the kickoff to this whole week, right? And I don't know, we're going to have people on the ground there.
There's going to be 20,000 people there. They think 20,000 people at least are going to be at the Summerfest grounds. And they're already telling people before what happened today that you can't park down there. There will literally be no parking. They're telling people you need to ride share or take public transportation. And does it change that? And to Vince, to your point, I think this is the story on Monday. I think if things go well on Monday and there's no incident, that we're into the rest of the week and this fades into the background. I think this is clearly the Monday story. I think this is clearly what we kick off the convention with. Look what happened on Saturday. Everybody's in Milwaukee. Can we keep people safe? I think if that happens and the stories start turning to Major Garrett's in town and Jake Tapper's in town and so on and so forth, and we roll past Monday, I think it does diminish. And then I think we focus on the shots of the Calatrava and all those other things. But come Monday, this is going to be a much different story than we thought it was going to be.
I can report I came in a little bit later than did Steve in terms of what I saw around our offices here in downtown, which are just up against that hard security perimeter. I didn't notice anything. I didn't notice any increased security. I didn't notice any changes from when I came into work earlier today. So I'm interested. I would like to try to get over to Fiserv Forum at some point tonight and see if they've locked things down more securely. We were in the venue yesterday where this all takes place. We were at the broadcast center, the nearby UWM Panther Arena. And I don't want to suggest that it was easy access, but certainly those who were properly credentialed went through security, and it was, kind of standard procedure. I would have to imagine that that is ramped up to some effect. But in terms of what folks who are in and around downtown today, I'm not going to see anything at the immediate moment. To your point on Summerfest as well, John, the delegations are getting rides. And I was looking at the schedule for Sunday, and the RNC has published all its major events. And so for those delegations who are staying at, state by state, they have entire hotels rented out. So the delegation who's here from Colorado is staying at XYZ Hotel. They'll have some sort of service that's bringing them downtown. For those folks who are quote-unquote ticketed guests, which would be folks outside the delegations, and there aren't that many, then, that's going to complicate things even further.
Yeah, this is such an unknown for us because we all expected the RNC to be what it was, right? We have certainly this big race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. We kind of knew the security. We've been briefed on it over and over again. We know our game plan. And then you interject a story like this, now called an attempted assassination of the president, across multiple sources, big media networks saying that. Clearly, that's what I saw, and now we have much more detail coming out. Again, I'd be cautious with one of the dangers of living in the social media world is people are just throwing stuff out, and it's all over the place. I would caution people, and I've deliberately avoided it, because I don't think that's a good place to be right now. Certainly you can use it if you want to, but I would be very cautious with just putting things or sharing things that you don't know that are multiple sourced, that are real journalists putting that stuff out, and not every other variety that we've certainly come to know in our recent technological revolution. I wonder, though, and I'm going to go back to this point because this is something that I want to talk about on Monday with both Bill McCoshen and Joseph Pecky, my two strategists on both sides. If the dynamic of the conversation at the RNC is different now because of this, will political violence be a story that's talked about at a convention, or is it just business as usual? That dynamic is something I'm going to be watching and talking about because I'm curious how that will affect that. If it's like John said, we talk about it for a day and then we move on to the nuts and bolts of a convention, that would be great. Thankfully,
I think that,
we're not talking about something worse
you raise
here.
An interesting point. Steve, you raise an interesting point. I think that Republicans will try to jump on this, and they will try to use this as fodder for, look, they tried to kill our guy. They tried to shoot our guy, and he stood up with his hat in his hand, literally, and blood on the side of his face, and said, fight, fight, fight. You will not let that happen. I think this becomes part of their message, and I think they use this as, to paraphrase, look how tough our guy is. He's not going to let anybody stand in the way of what he wants to do. And I think Democrats have to hope that this goes away, that we don't talk about this, that, you know, we focus on how Joe Biden was empathetic and said the right things and reached out to Donald Trump, but that this is not the story. Because if you're the Democrats, this is the worst case scenario. Somebody tried to kill Donald Trump and he survived. And he stood up with blood on his face, surrounded by men and women Secret Service agents, and pumped his fist in the air and had to be escorted off the stage, and is now rising up in Milwaukee to take to a different podium and talk about what he envisions for the country, strong and vigorous, and having survived somebody trying to kill him.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's a story. That's a Hollywood narrative, and as somebody who came out of, you know, celebrity TV, Celebrity Apprentice, that's certainly probably something he could do. I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Donald Trump, and I have no idea what his first comments will be, and I have no idea where he's going to take this. Being president is different than any other job in the world, right? And I would hope that the president understands, because he's now a victim of it, that violence for whatever reason is not a good thing.
Yes.
That's not the message we need. And whether you use that for a political campaign ad or in a speech, that's up to him. That's his discretion. But I hope that's not the messaging that we're going to go forward with the next three to 4 months.
I want to read to you.
Oh, go ahead, Vinny.
So piggybacking off of your point, you've outlined what likely could be a Republican strategy around this in terms of the politics. The Democrats could find a way as well with an inroad in terms of what they see about gun control, the efforts that they've made. I'll read to you point number 7 in the summary from the Republican Party platform that is to be adopted here in Milwaukee. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Does that Second Amendment conversation enter into it? Can it be something that the Democrats, would use to say this is what we've been talking about? And would they? And I'm not suggesting that you or I or anyone here advocates for that. But if I were a strategist on the left, that's where I would begin having that conversation. In terms of, look, this is what we've been talking about. Is there a gun control point to be made here on the left? On the right, how do they continue to talk about that Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms, how important that is to their core, to their base, and yet still reconcile with what just played out?
John, I know that you've been on it before I was, because I was watching and then drove to the thing. As you approach now the end of this weekend and Monday, when we're all going to be working at the RNC, how has your focus changed now? What are you thinking about? What are you going to do? And I know we have Wyatt that's going to be coming up here in a second. Wyatt Barmarpooli's out there as well. But I'm just curious how your approach at this moment, a few hours later, has changed.
I think it has changed, especially for Monday. You know, my plan was to get to the station fairly early on Monday morning and head over to the hotel where all the Wisconsin delegation is staying, which is in the soft security zone, by the way, where weapons are allowed, by the way. And I was going to head over there and try to see who I could talk to. Now I think even if I head over there, it's to talk about this issue that Vince just laid out. It's to talk about Donald Trump and the attempted apparent assassination of Donald Trump. It's to have that conversation. So I think the workflow stays the same, but I think the things we talk about, at least on Monday, change. I think they're completely different out of necessity. Donald Trump will probably, because you know Donald Trump, either talk tonight or talk tomorrow. He will show up somewhere and say something about this. But the first opportunity to talk to most of these other people about what happened at the rally is going to come Monday in Milwaukee. And so I think that's what we end up talking about. Hey, and people are talking right now. Wyatt Barmarpooli is actually outside Fiserv Forum, where he has been connecting with people there in Deer District, and Wyatt is with us. Hey, Wyatt.
Hey, John, I'm standing right in front of the Trump 2024 sign, which earlier today when I came out here was uncovered, now covered in plastic sheeting held down with sandbags. Just a few minutes ago, about 24 police from Secret Service and what looks like Homeland Security arrived right here in front of Pfizer Forum wearing bulletproof vests and carrying backpacks. And other than that, up until now, it's been mostly media members and a few people I've been able to talk to, but we're starting to see that security increase around Pfizer Forum.
That's interesting, Wyatt. Are there people besides security milling about, or is it quiet there in Deer District?
It's pretty quiet in the Deer District specifically. If you go down to Water Street, people are there at the restaurants, music is playing, and the restaurants here are still, several of them are still open, but there's a lot of media members and now a lot of security. There's been a couple dozen people. People are still coming by to check it out. I actually spoke to one person who clearly was here partially to see the RNC before it all kicks off, and she said to me that one of her friends was at the rally and had to hide behind a chair when this all happened. Luckily, her friend is fine, but this is a resident of Milwaukee who was 1 degree of separation away from this event.
Wyatt, I want to have you help us flush out the sign thing that you just mentioned, because I don't understand it. I can picture what you're talking about, but a Trump sign that's now been covered up, you believe that's related to what happened in Pennsylvania?
All I can say is that earlier, it's like the big buck sign where it is big 3D letters that say Trump 2024. If you check out our Twitter page at 620 WTMJ, you can see my photo comparing the two. So it's a big 3D sign that earlier in the day, prior to the incident in Pennsylvania, was not covered in plastic sheeting and now is. I cannot confirm that they are related, only that it is different now after it. We are still not being checked by security. I'm in the red zone, but I didn't even get checked to go into the yellow zone. It's still members of the public are allowed to come out and be outside Pfizer Forum almost as if it was a Bucs game. And so I wonder if it was related to that, if they didn't want any defacement of the sign, whether pro or anti-Trump. I don't think they wanted it. I don't think it's to keep it from blowing away. It looks pretty heavy, but that's what I'm seeing right now. Other than that, I haven't seen really any changes, except now the Secret Service folks on standby here outside Pfizer Forum.
Wyatt Barmore-Pooley outside Pfizer Forum. Wyatt, keep us updated. Let us know if you see any change. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good work.
Yeah, hard to tell. Johnny, you've been down there. Steve, you've been down there as well. What's just a regular matter of course of setup? They're not quite done. Everything goes right up to the last minute.
Let's not forget the RNC's Monday. It's Saturday. They're still doing things down there to get ready.
Friday, they were still filling up balloons.
Yeah,
okay, so there's a lot of work to do in and around Pfizer Forum and inside that area to get things ready for when delegates actually start showing up there on Monday.
It's not speculation to say things are going to be tighter. I think we can safely say that things are going to change in that direction, and what that means, how that plays out, we'll certainly find out. John and I were talking earlier, Vince. I can imagine, and Greg had some of this as well, law enforcement, not that they already weren't on high alert, they are probably talking or starting to gather and assemble as we speak to plot strategy. We're not going to be aware of that strategy until we come face to face with it when it plays out on the streets and the buildings of Milwaukee.
Another thing we've talked about at the party I was at before I came here, because a lot of us are from Greendale, which is where the headquarters for a lot of the law enforcement who are in town is setting up. If folks know that area, about 60th and Grange, it used to be, well, I guess most recently it was a Goodwill headquarters, and then before that it was Reader's Digest, Ryman Publications for many years there. It's just kind of a large piece of property that wasn't being used. Folks who were driving in that area today told me there was armed security outside the perimeter of that. That's where they're going to be staging, and there might have been other, regardless of whether or not this played out today as it did.
The guy that sat in the chair, real quick, go ahead.
Let me give you a couple things that I'm hearing from law enforcement right as you guys speak. I just got a couple of texts. So a source tells me that right now a sweep is going on at Pfizer Forum, which was already scheduled. This was on the schedule for the Saturday before the convention. But if you see a lot more security out there, it's because they are literally making everybody get out of the building. from audio people to convention organizers to the balloon guy. Everybody's out of the building for a security sweep right now. The source telling me that this may be more detailed than it was intended to be because of what's happening. My co-host, Julia Fellow, on another note, telling me that she spoke to a reporter who was at the Pennsylvania rally who says that it was terrifying, unlike anything the reporter had ever covered before. Reporters were shaken. Reporters were getting out of there quickly. Reporters could clearly hear the gunshots. And it just kind of is reverberating through a day that I can't say I'm completely surprised, but when this happens, it is surprising and it is shocking. And the Associated Press now reporting that this is being investigated as an official assassination attempt.
John had the news first, and we certainly broke it for you on WTMJ. We'll continue to do that, follow that story. John Mercure, Vince Vitrano, Greg Matzik, Adam Roberts, Wyatt Barmarpuli, and yours truly, Steve Scaffidi from the Political Power Hour. We're going to cover this story as we hear the details and as they're sourced properly. You're listening, of course, to 620. Short break here, WTMJ.
From big tailgate parties to cozy dinners for two, the freshest ideas start with a stop at Century Foods.
Now through Wednesday, save on 11 to 12 ounce selected varieties. Post Honey Bunches of Oat cereal, 2 for $5. 15 to 16 ounce selected varieties. Bush's Best Baked Beans, 2 for $4. 45 ounce selected varieties. Country Crock, $4.99. 56 to 57.6 ounce selected varieties. Extra Laundry, $2.99.
Why'd you throw my glass across the room?
I have to keep practicing.
The vase from Aunt Sophie?
I'm warming up in case I get to take them out at American Family Field. Read this.
Win the ultimate baseball fan experience at Century Foods?
You either get to throw out the first pitch, hold the finish line for the famous racing sausages, or be on the field during batting practice. My new TV!
Just doing a little batting practice of my own.
The ultimate baseball fan experience. Return the entry form found in the weekly ad to any Century by July 24th.
Trust in your family's comfort at home with Cider Heating, Plumbing, and Electrical. They're the oldest family-owned HVAC company in southeast Wisconsin. 4 generations of Ciders, and their highly trained technicians provide a one-stop shop for all home and business comfort needs, including an emergency service line that's always live and a 12-year parts and labor warranty on all Daikin products. Get peace of mind by scheduling maintenance today with Cider Heating, Plumbing, and Electrical. That's SEIDER, cider.com.
When severe weather hits and the power goes out, do you have a plan? For reliable power and peace of mind, propane can do that. It only takes about 10 seconds for a propane-powered generator to restore power to your home. So no matter what Mother Nature has in store, you know you're prepared. Learn more at WIPGA.org. This message is sponsored by your local propane provider and the Wisconsin Propane Education and Research Council.
Siding Unlimited, named the best window installers not just here but in the whole USA. Get the best. Siding Unlimited, 3-time winner as America's best window installer. For windows, you call Siding Unlimited first and directly. SidingUnlimited.com.
At Progressive, we know money can't buy you happiness, but money did help you buy an RV, which means an excuse from working Saturday with your insufferable coworker, Dave. So money is helping you listen to birds chirp instead of Dave chirping about how his toddler is fluent in 3 languages. And it's also why you'll be smelling pine trees in the air, not Dave's tuna melt reheating in a microwave. So save money by bundling your RV or boat insurance with home or auto from Progressive and buy more happiness, or something close to it. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
Hi, welcome to Staples.
Hi, my son's teacher emailed his back-to-school list. He needs crayons and a comp book for every subject.
Okay, no problem. With Staples Hot Deals, you'll find super low prices on hundreds of items for back to school.
Oh, now they're saying he needs folders and glue.
You got it.
And markers?
Of course.
Oh, geez.
Can we get a cart, please?
Save big on back to school with Staples Hot Deals. Right now, 24-pack Crayola crayons and comp books are only 50 cents each at Staples. Ends 8/24, in-store only, limit 30.
Breaking news coverage. The president, Donald Trump, former president, was rushed off a stage late this afternoon. A campaign rally in Boulter, Pennsylvania, I should say. Sounds of gunshots. We don't know the extent of the president's injury, other than his campaign says he's fine. They issued a statement almost immediately. We've now seen, most of you have seen the images, the president very defiant, yelling fight from the stage a couple times. John Mercure has some more details on that story.
Hey, a couple of things, guys. You know, what this brought to mind for me is also Theodore Roosevelt was, I think it was maybe 1912, was shot in Milwaukee delivering a speech at the Gilpatrick Hotel. Someone tried to assassinate Theodore Roosevelt in Milwaukee more than 100 years ago, and it was very similar. It was a campaign rally, of course, different than a Trump rally, but a campaign rally, and he was shot in the chest, and his glasses case actually stopped the bullet, as well as a 50-page brief that he had in his pocket. That's now the Hyatt Regency. So that happened here in Milwaukee as we think about the convention coming to town. Also, law enforcement sources now telling me that meetings that were not scheduled for tonight are taking place tonight as people get called in on their Saturday night to reevaluate what we're doing, where the perimeter lies for the security zones, whether the screening will change for people coming in and out of the security zones. And that is now turned from we have a plan scenario for the RNC on Monday to we are reevaluating and it's a fluid situation scenario. So everybody meeting, everybody discussing what will happen in Milwaukee on Monday.
On the investigation, John, ABC News' Alex Stone now reporting sourced information that says he has spoken to investigators saying that they are investigating this as an assassination attempt, quote, until it is not. And according to a source, Alex Stone and ABC News reporting. In other words, investigators are going under the assumption that this was an attempt on the president's life, that it was deliberate, that it was a target for him, and that's why it was done, until they receive information that tells them otherwise.
We have reporters.
And Fox News reporting the FBI has also been deployed to the scene, and they are en route. They're not at normal rallies, but they're also investigating.
And we have reporters in the studio, reporters in the newsroom, and, of course, reporters on the streets. And we are gathering the information, as a lot of you are, because we are a technologically friendly world now. We're all hearing things and seeing things. I want to read this. This is from our former colleague, former teammate here, Charlie Sykes. History has a grim lesson. Violence of any type begets more violence and serves as an excuse to the side affected to enact revenge. That's an important point. That's one that I made earlier. That I think, take a pause. Horrible thing. The president, it seems like former President Donald Trump is okay. Tragically, someone else was killed in this incident, which you never want to see, at a campaign rally of all places with, as we've talked about, John and Vince, all that security in place, the same security that's going to be here for the convention. Unfortunate. We'll find out how that happened in the hours and days ahead. That's the reality of the world we live in. And violence, whether you use it politically, use it in the act of revenge, or in any format, is not a proper, in my opinion, reaction to this story.
You just mentioned technology, Steve, so I hope this works. But for the folks who might just be joining us and perhaps haven't seen the video or know exactly what happened, President Donald Trump was at the podium delivering a speech at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania when you heard multiple shots ring out. The president appeared to have been struck perhaps by a bullet. There are mixed reports as to whether or not it was a bullet that actually grazed the president on the side of his face. He was bleeding from the ear, or whether that could have been shrapnel from something else that was hit by a bullet and then impacted the president. Let me just play this. This is a scene setter from ABC News, Alex Stone, who is talking about what Secret Service agents saw in those moments.
The Secret Service jumped in. The mic was still hot that the president had been speaking into. We could hear Secret Service agents say that the shooter was down. They then said which agent was going to be in charge, and they said, on your count, and they counted down and then got the former president up, protecting him and getting him down to that vehicle to get him out of there.
So understanding that people might just be joining us and are going, what are they talking about at WTMJ? What happened? Want to continue to repeat some of that information as it becomes clear exactly what played out.
Yeah, our own Greg Matzik is out on the street, and he is gathering information, and let's go hear what Greg has to say.
Hey, guys, we're in the heart of downtown Milwaukee, right in the corner of Velar, Phillips, and Wells. And I'm here with CBS Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett, who was quite literally in an airplane not long ago and now on the streets in Milwaukee. Walk me through your timeline.
I'm on the plane, and typically I don't have my Wi-Fi up on the plane. It's one of the few places in my life where I can relax for just a couple of minutes. As soon as we touch down, my phone, of course, explodes. And I know immediately that we're going to be going live all night tonight. And we're trying to gather information like the rest of the country is. And I've been on the phone with Reince Priebus, who you well know is the chairman of this event. deeply involved in Wisconsin Republican politics, National Republican Party politics, and he told me nothing is going to change here. He's gotten that word from the former president himself. He wants the event to go on as planned and wants to be here as often as he was intending to be originally, and wants the convention to proceed as planned. No changes. Nothing to suggest this is inhibiting either the former president or those around him from having this event go on as planned. I asked Ryan Priebus, do you imagine that whatever was planned before this event in Butler, Pennsylvania, in terms of security, will that be enhanced? He said, I don't know. I haven't heard yet. They've got a lot of other priorities to attend to first. I said, quite naturally, there's a sequential thing. But I think it's safe to assume that something will be re-examined in light of this as to the perimeter here in Milwaukee. There's a hard perimeter, as you know. There's a soft perimeter. The soft may also become hard now. We don't know. But I have to believe there will be at least this thorough relook and maybe some changes, some adaptations. Nothing to report yet. Ryan's hadn't heard anything about it, and I guarantee you know and I know he would hear first, but that's what I know.
Major, I think we all are asking the question. It's a two-word question. Now what?
Now what?
Right? And that question can be taken 100 different ways,
exactly.
Right, for 100 different things as it relates to this convention.
Right. And does this event cloud every political event from now until this election is held on November 5th? Does every public event for the President of the United States, for former President Trump, have this hanging over it? Are those who want to attend those events now going to be treated differently? Is the perimeter there? Is the security there going to be different, longer, more invasive? Probably. And what does it do to the psyche of the country? We're already in a psychologically fragile place, I think it's fair to say. That's not a commentary from Major Garrett. That's just sifting through polling data for 2 years about anxiety and nervousness and fear about political violence. Well, now we've seen something at the highest levels. The former President of the United States. Everyone in the country, regardless of party, will be saying to themselves and are saying to themselves right now, oh my gosh, what possibly is next? I don't know. I wish I did. But if we were in a fraught emotional place before, and we're in a more fraught emotional place now.
People are trying to figure out, how does this happen at a rally? And my thought goes back to President Trump's visits, former President Trump's visits to Wisconsin, outdoor rally in the Racine area, indoor rally in Green Bay. Is there something to the indoor versus outdoor? You can't get into these events with a firearm. You can't get close.
Indoor is certainly more secure, but outdoor allows for larger crowds. It allows for more of the festival atmosphere, and former President Trump and his campaign and the supporters of former President Trump love the festival atmosphere. But those things are going to get a relook. I guarantee you they're going to get a relook. I don't know if anything will change. It's far too early to suggest they will, and I make no predictions about that. But everything from this point forward will at least, at minimum, get a relook.
You mentioned that.
And the other thing to point out,
yes.
Trump rallies are loud. Trump rallies are loud. They're boisterous events. There are all sorts of sounds. There's huge music that plays at a very loud level. The crowd sings. There's kind of a call and response long before the former president gets there. That's one of the reasons that they're fun and attractive to Trump supporters. That also creates confusion. And I guarantee you, I wasn't in Butler, Pennsylvania. I've only seen the video, but I guarantee you in those moments, people were frozen a second because it's a loud environment. It's a loud environment with lots of different sounds. And firecrackers sound sometimes like gunfire. I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's what the eyewitness accounts seem to suggest. And that sounds very plausible to me. But I just want to underscore that this festival, outdoor, loud, boisterous atmosphere is part of the DNA of a Trump rally. I've attended more than 100 in my life, easily more than 100. That makes it also more of a challenge for anyone in a security position, anyone in a security posture, because there are just so many sounds and so much space.
You mentioned your sources are telling you that the hope and the goal is that maybe this event can just run as planned. This is supposed to be a very celebratory week in Milwaukee. We're standing in the corner of Velar, Phillips, and Wells in the heart of downtown Milwaukee. There's bunting, there's welcome GOP banners, right? You're seeing the display, the welcome from Wisconsin.
Right.
I can't help but wonder just how the mood has shifted here, or if it will be a seismic shift come Monday morning.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know how people's stomachs aren't churning a couple of more ways than they were before this event happen. My stomach's churning, and I'm a pretty experienced reporter, seen a lot of things, but these are stomach-churning moments. They're stomach-churning for people in the Secret Service, for any local law enforcement. I guarantee you, every place now where a Trump or Biden event is going to be in the future, the county sheriff, the police department, the Secret Service are going to be having much more extensive conversations. Not to suggest they don't have extensive conversations, but they will be layered and layered and layered on top of that because this thing has happened. And this shows everyone in a crystalline way that violence is terrifying, political violence is awful, it strikes to the heart of everything we believe in as a country, and all the things we assume about ourselves and about our future, and those who are entrusted with making those environments so political discourse can be carried out securely, even more anxious.
I don't know when or if Donald Trump will take the stage at Fiserv Forum, but I can only imagine the roar when he does walk across that stage.
I have no insight whatsoever, but it would not surprise me if he was here Monday night.
Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett, I know your day is much different than intended or what you thought it was going to be. Yeah. Glad to see you in Milwaukee. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, Greg Matzek talking to Major Garrett. Now, John, you have Major on every week. Great wisdom, obviously the experience. I'm sure you have something to tag on to that.
I do, and a couple of things my sources are telling me that I actually wanted to add to this. First off, I mean, listening to Major, it has really just struck me that Donald Trump may have been a half inch away from losing his life at that rally. He is, by the way, commenting publicly for the first time. He's saying a bullet ripped through my skin, a bullet pierced my upper ear, I could hear the whizzing, things like that, things that we will be thinking about. But what I really wanted to piggyback on was the questions about the security zone. I'm hearing from my sources that meetings tonight are taking place that would make the yellow zone that we're all familiar with, that's the outer security zone, into part of the red zone. And that the yellow zone as it currently exists could be extended and be made bigger. Here's the problem. It's Saturday. The fencing's in place. The cameras are in place. That is very, very difficult logistically. So I'm not predicting that will happen, but discussions are taking place that happening. What's more likely to happen, my source tells me, is that the zones will stay the same, but the screening will be much, much, much more intense. It will take longer. It will be much more thorough, and it was already going to be thorough. But to use Major's term, the layering may be much different. But don't be shocked if you wake up and you plan to come into downtown, and what you thought were the security zones and we had memorized, and you thought were the entry points into the security zones, if some of that ends up being changed. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's some of the things that I'm hearing. Hey, Wyatt Barmore-Pooley, let's get out to Wyatt. Wyatt has been at Fiserv Forum. That's going to be at the center of what happens beginning on Monday. Wyatt, what are you seeing and hearing?
Well, I told you when I joined you last that we've seen an increased presence of Secret Service officers here at Fiserv Forum. I was able to speak with one of them after I got off the air with you, and I just asked him whether we were going to have to leave, and he confirmed to me that they're not having anybody leave the plaza right now. Deer District is still open, not only to media. I've got my badge and yellow lanyard, but to the general public. I've been able to speak to more people about their reaction to today's event. So as of right now, the security level outside Fiserv Forum hasn't changed, even though we are, I was just listening to you, we're anticipating that there might be possible changes to what's going on. At least right now, things are holding pretty steady.
So, Wyatt, can you clearly see that there is a large presence of Secret Service and of law enforcement down in Fiserv area?
Well, yeah, so I was out here earlier this afternoon exploring the convention site, getting ready for our coverage starting really tomorrow and Monday, and I didn't see anyone with Secret Service. I saw outside security because I was in the yellow zone, but at Fiserv Forum, I barely saw anybody. Now there's that group of more than a dozen officers standing by the suite guest entrance, so the main entrance of Fiserv Forum, where they've got the big signage. They're on the far right with bulletproof vests and backpacks. I see more officers just at general points. There's one over by the entrance with all of the entrance to the plaza with all of the state flags. I'm seeing, much more Secret Service badges. Hello?
I think maybe we lost Wyatt. Are you there, Wyatt?
I think we lost him, John. But, I mean, good reporting there. We've got people on the street. We're certainly gathering the information. And just to catch people up, the President of the United States, number 45, candidate for the next 4 years, Donald Trump shot, he's injured. We're not certain that the bullet hit him. I know that Vince said he issued a statement, or someone said that. There's other reports that he was hit by glass, so we're going to verify that. The former president, said he heard a whizzing sound. He said, Donald Trump, that he felt a bullet rip through his skin. We'll find out all of that information. We know that some individuals are dead, and apparently there's some injuries as well. This happened in Pennsylvania a few hours ago now, and we are now sort of in that weird twilight time where we're trying to figure out what comes next. Not just thankful that the former president's okay, but what's the new rules going to be for the RNC, and all of those stories are swirling. I know, Vince, you've been gathering audio. We've heard from the president. Yeah. Joe Biden has had some thoughts, and I think a lot of the people that I'm reading are saying, look, this is not a moment to be political about this. This is not a good thing. We've had these happen before. I remember Reagan. Certainly, you go all the way back to JFK in 1963. It is a horrific story whenever it happens. Thankfully, former President Donald Trump is okay.
President Biden spoke, about a half hour ago. I'll give you about a 30-second snippet of that here in a moment. Let me get you the latest on the investigation, as John alluded to as well. And you mentioned one person confirmed dead, a bystander or someone who was in that crowd. Possibly a second person is also dead. That information coming from the district attorney's office there where this occurred in Pennsylvania. Additionally, now the focus on the suspect. We know very little about that person at this point, but ABC News is speaking with Elizabeth Newman. She was in the Department of Homeland Security in the former President Trump administration. She's talking about what investigators will be looking at immediately.
We're going to be looking to find out where he has been, find out where he obtained the weapons that he used, looking into phones and computers and his online engagement.
And Elizabeth Newman was in the Department of Homeland Security under former President Trump. As for President Biden, yes, within about the last half hour or so, he did speak directly with remarks to the nation. Here's about 30 seconds of the president.
So far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that there's thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours.
We've not heard from the White House nor the Trump campaign whether or not that phone call has been initiated or taken place. But again, you hear the president saying that he wanted to contact former President Trump this evening.
And I'll say it to you, John and Vince, since you're here. What a moment this is. I mean, this doesn't happen very often. Unfortunately, it has happened. Lincoln, certainly Teddy Roosevelt shot at, and certainly JFK and Ronald Reagan, and even Gerald Ford was fired upon. These are one of those rare things that happen in the course of our country's history, 200 plus years, where all of a sudden everything stops. Even in the midst of this incredibly tense, sometimes hostile, angry, certainly filled with conspiracy theories, this campaign, which still has 3+ months to go, and then we're going to vote in November. We had one debate. Joe Biden performed miserably, and that's all we've sort of talked about leading into this RNC. That narrative's gone, John. That's over. We're not talking about that now.
You know, this is very interesting, Vince, because I had a Democratic operative who I was talking to less than an hour ago now, and this person told me, we woke up today nervous about the debate situation and the cognitive issue. And so that appears to be gone. That's at least for the time being kicked to the side, because now this is what we will be talking about by and large, because it was televised, by the way. These other incidents you talked about, there wasn't the footage that there is now. I mean, Reagan, we saw, but nothing like this that we've seen before. So the operative was telling me, cognitive issue, kicked to the back burner, at least for the time being. Now they have to deal with something different, and that is a visual image of Donald Trump with blood on his face, defiantly raising his hand at a rally decked out in red, white, and blue, and standing tall and walking off a stage after someone tried to kill him. And that's not easy for Democrats either. And Joe Biden said all the right things, struck the right tone, but this is not a great day. And I hate to dive into politics, but the president's going to be okay. The former president, excuse me, is going to be okay. But this is not a great day for Democrats either. This is the images we're going to see. I can guarantee you they're already making the ads. They're already changing probably what we're going to see on the big screens at the RNC, and it will include some of this.
There's always consequences to actual events, and this is going to be one that's going to be remembered forever. There actually is a Truth Social post from Donald Trump, cited by Caitlin Collins. I'll read some of it. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response in the shooting that just took place in Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America, from the former president, current candidate for president, Donald J. Trump.
Also hearing, Steve, now from some of those folks who are going to be investigating exactly what happened. Law enforcement sources telling ABC News that the shooter fired as many as 8 rounds from an AR-style rifle while perched upon a rooftop that was adjacent to the rally venue. So a lot of us who have covered these things time and time again, I've covered sitting presidents, I've covered candidates where that security perimeter is hard, and even just to gain entry as a journalist, you have to go through a background check and all these other things. Folks have been wondering out loud, how possibly could this happen? It sounds like this could have come from, and likely came from, outside that security perimeter.
We all know the history, right? JFK shot from the Texas Book Depository. How is this even possible, given that history, given the knowledge we have about what these weapons can do, that someone could actually do this?
Well, and John, you've covered how many of these as well. I mean, there are airborne, there's the helicopter above during an outdoor event. There are
snipers.
Plainclothes and otherwise, security details, Secret Service all over the place. How a person could have been in that position to get that shot or shots off is still an open question. One more thing before I get back to you here, John. Secret Service confirming that they were the ones who neutralized the shooter. ABC also reporting the incident is being investigated, as we indicated, as an assassination attempt unless investigators get information otherwise. Let me give you the district attorney here in Butler County, Pennsylvania, where this happened. His name is Richard Goldinger. He was talking about what happened with the 2 people who were shot outside of former President Trump.
We have one spectator who did pass away as a result of this incident. The second individual that was removed from the scene is in what I would say serious condition.
That is Richard Goldinger. He's the district attorney there in Butler County, Pennsylvania. But, John, to your point, obviously, this isn't really going to be his case. You've got FBI and Secret Service and all sorts of federal agents who will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the investigation. But right now, Goldinger there in Butler County, Pennsylvania, is the one doing the talking.
And to bring it back to Milwaukee, gentlemen, the Cleveland mayor, who's been doing a lot of interviews with folks in Milwaukee about what led to their successful convention and how it changed their city. He said a lot of the things that Milwaukee has going for it, Cleveland did. A lakefront that they have reclaimed, a lakefront that's alive and vibrant, a restaurant culture that has grown and gotten better. A lot of the things we talk about here in Milwaukee, he said that all contributed to Cleveland changing their image and having a good convention. He specifically mentioned, unprovoked, that one of the other things that was so important was that during the Cleveland convention, there was not violence, either from protesters or for bad actors going after people at the convention, that it was a quiet week on the crime side, it was safe, it was secure, and at the top of their list going into the convention was that would not be the case, and that would be something that would be hard for them to control if someone really wanted to do something stupid or bad. And now this is at the top of the list for Milwaukee, to ensure that does not happen here, to ensure that those 5,000 law enforcement folks coming from around the country and all of ours here in Southeast Wisconsin, make sure they do have a plan. Those plans, by the way, that my sources tell me are being revamped in impromptu meetings tonight, because we cannot afford for that to be the headline here in Milwaukee.
CBS confirming as much, John. I'm seeing that cross here as well. Planning currently underway to expand the perimeter of the Republican National Convention to create a larger buffer zone around the events, to corroborate your sourced reporting.
It's going to be interesting because this is going to be stressful for anybody who has to work down there. And we've all been memorizing those charts with the security perimeter.
How to get in, where to go, where you can and can't go. Those things are all, we've been looking at that for weeks.
And now it might change. It might change because of what happened in Pennsylvania. And whatever it takes to keep us all safe, that's fine. If we got to walk further or take longer, that is really no big deal. But because of what happened in Pennsylvania, what will happen in Milwaukee, beginning really tomorrow night at the Summerfest grounds and then into Monday, is going to change. I wonder if the event tomorrow night's going to be different. I mean, there are going to be 20,000 people at least, they believe, down at the Henry Meyer Festival grounds where Summerfest is held for a kickoff concert and rally with, by the way, adjacent buildings, big bridges, things like that. Is that going to change? Will tomorrow night's event change?
Either of you think that this incident and now everything that's going to come after changes the temperature of the protests or the style of protest at the RNC in Milwaukee, even where they can protest? Any of that's going to change, you think?
Well, that's a good question. We had the protest director, Omar Flores, on our show late this week, and they have worked out a deal with the city now where they can walk and where they can protest. And so at least they have now said, we don't believe we need to ignore police orders. We've worked out a deal. But the tone, that's a really good question. I think so. I think that it sends a really bad message if the tone is aggressive and ultra defiant and loud. Protests by nature are just that, but I think that there is a good chance that the nature and tone of the protest changes. What do you think, Vetrano?
I've been largely disinterested in that story, and not to be disrespectful to those folks who want to, speak their mind left, right, otherwise. They're going to do the same thing down in Chicago. So I didn't mean it that way, but more just, there was going to be protests. There were going to be protests in the 2020 DNC. There are going to be protests in the RNC. Like, I just thought that was this side story that was taking up a lot more oxygen than it deserved. I've changed my mind on that for sure, given the heightened awareness now that you're going to have anyone in law enforcement who now has, and the stakes being higher. I wonder, too, to your point, John, whether that changes the perspective of those folks who want to hold those rallies and those marches, right? You want your message to be heard, but how do you want your message to be perceived? And I think that is a question that should be in front of them this evening. If they are seen as combative prior to this, it's kind of like, yeah, they're giving them hell. Now, after this, does that change that conversation?
And even for the individual, though, think about the individual. If you're someone who's passionate about politics, does this incident, this event, this assassination attempt, at least identified by Secret Service and other agencies, change how you look at this election or how you react to people who maybe think or vote differently than you do or belong to a different party? I think for some people it does, John.
Yeah. I think for some people, you're right. I think it does. While you were talking, I was trying to look through my text chain that I have going on with one of these sources because they had mentioned this and I found it. I also wonder, I'm reading now from the text, I also wonder if those people who want to protest and march right next to Fiserv Forum and make loud noises inside the security zone realize now why that was a very bad idea. And of course, now that route has been changed, so that will not happen. But that's all being discussed tonight. And I think we cannot underestimate that there are meetings literally happening right now that could completely revamp the security zone and access. My source also telling me that a move could be made to limit the types of people, even credentialed, who are allowed into some of these areas. Can you imagine? We've all been credentialed. We've all been told where we can and can't go and how we can go there. And now there's at least discussions that could change. The sources also tell me nothing's been decided. There have been no changes, but it's all being discussed right now.
And us three have talked about this, and we had this in meetings as well. There's a reality that some people might not know. The Home Bridge is closed. I think 11 o'clock, is it tonight it closes?
Yeah, tonight.
And that will be closed through like early Monday morning, and maybe that even gets extended now because I hope not, because that's my route to work on my early drive to Milwaukee to do my show. But all of those realities, even the checkpoints, where the zones are, how secure they are, I think are all up for grabs right now. And as John said, meetings are being held, or they will be held shortly, that are going to kind of sort that information out. Here's what I do know. I have ultimate faith in the public safety folks who are going to protect all of us at the RNC and in and around bars, restaurants, other facilities. They have trained for this. They know what they're doing. It's the highest level of training you can get. Some of these people have traveled to other states for weeks at a time to learn what to do in this situation. I have ultimate faith in them. We need the public to be of a mindset that says things like this happen in our country's history. And I've went through it before. It's not going to dictate how we elect our presidents, the process, the vote. We should never let that happen. And I think this is one of those moments where all of us can take a pause and say, look, we're better than this.
I agree.
As difficult as that is.
That's well said. That's well said. I agree with you. I can tell you the sources I'm talking to are nervous. And they're nervous about two things that aren't even related directly to they're related to the convention, but they're adjacent. They are nervous about the big event tomorrow night at the Summerfest grounds and all the buildings that line the Summerfest grounds. They're also nervous about there's a big event planned for Thursday night after Donald Trump becomes the official nominee and makes his speech. There's a huge event, another ticketed event at Potawatomi at their new music venue, where most people that are at the convention are expected to be. And that's another huge event with a lot of people. And the buzz was, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump found his way to that venue because he loves these sort of events and it would be an adoring crowd. My goodness. I wonder what the Secret Service thinks about that at this point.
You know, as challenging as the life of a Secret Service agent is, any of you, another question for you, because I'm not the journalist in the room, any of you think this could be the last campaign rally of this type, outside, unprotected, that we see in the next 3 to 4 months by either candidate?
That's an interesting thing to think about. I know that Secret Service would much rather have these rallies inside because they can control it. And I know Donald Trump would rather have them outside. And I think this will be a battle. I think Secret Service will want that. They will advocate for that. And Donald Trump will say, I'm going to give them hell and I'm not going to run scared. I'm going to do bigger ones and they're going to be outside. And he'll rely on them to figure it out.
I have to think, John, that they're going to, as much as Donald, and I agree with you, Donald Trump is going to try to do everything bigger and grander because of this incident. And again, thank God he's okay, because I can't even imagine what this story would be like if he wasn't, because it would be horrific. But I can't imagine that the U.S. Secret Service, the people who are responsible for keeping not just Donald Trump, but Joe Biden safe, would allow an outdoor situation like this to happen again. I can't see that. They have to control it. And if the reports are true, and Vince told us that a rooftop potentially was involved here, I can't imagine they would put either candidate, one current president, one former president, in the line of fire. I just can't see that happening.
I just can't see a scenario, Steve, where there are no more outdoor rallies. Maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe it's at a airport tarmac, or it's in a stadium where they can more control the adjacent properties and perimeters. I don't know the layout of this property. You know, they haven't seen a wide enough shot where you see how close the buildings are. But to say we will no longer have outdoor rallies, that seems terrible. That seems like concession. That seems like we're giving in to the fact that, okay, then what happens if a guy sneaks a gun into an indoor rally? Are we going to stop having indoor rallies?
Nate, just want to make sure, just talking to our producer back here, do we have the governor? Okay, I want to bring in former governor of the great state of Wisconsin, Scott Walker. He is joining us live now on 620 WTMJ. Governor, I'm sure your phone is blowing up right now and you're having a lot of important conversations, so we appreciate your time very much. Can you just characterize what kind of conversations that you are having right now and that you've been having in the last couple of hours?
Yeah, well, just horrific. Obviously, from people in shock to being horrified to being upset. And I think it's pretty universal. This is not a partisan reaction. This is just disbelief, and it's one of the few things I think of late that crosses across the political gap that we have in America, and certainly here in Wisconsin, and that is just the horror that this could happen in America to anyone, least of all a presidential candidate, in this case a former president, someone who's seeking the same office again. So in many ways, I got to tell you too, for me at least, not only was the initial horror of hearing about it, one of my sons said, hey, you got to watch the news, and reached out to me. But then I just thought, you guys are a little bit younger, but I can still remember as a kid how I felt when President Reagan was shot back, 43 years ago. It feels like it in some ways it was yesterday. And those memories kind of reoccurred into my mind tonight, just remembering how scared we all felt back then. Obviously, it was very critical, at least in the first day or so. Thank God, literally, thank God that it appears as though it's not a serious injury, although certainly condolences to the other person whose family, or the family of the person who was killed, and The other is in critical condition. But just a shocking time in American history.
Governor, you know former President Donald Trump very, very well. You've met with him countless times. You're certainly involved in all things RNC in Milwaukee. It's early yet, and we're still sort of thinking of how this is going to all sort out. And we know there's meetings taking place or will be taking place shortly. Any sense, just from your perspective, someone who's lived this life that you have, that anything really changes here? Will it be a different RNC because of this or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, different in America for anything, not just a convention. I mean, I just think, again, as we saw after what happened to Kennedy, I wasn't alive then, but what happened after life in America after that, we saw how things changed after the attempted assassination against Ronald Reagan, how things changed. I remember him even talking about how sad he was that he couldn't go to church anymore because it was so disruptive because of the changes, understandable changes that were made after the attempt on his life. We saw changes after 9/11, not only for the president and the White House, but other public buildings. There'll obviously be changes now here, but I think in terms of the convention, yeah, there'll be a heightened sense of security. There may very well be, and probably appropriately so, a reexamination of where the secure zone is and whether or not that has to be pushed out even further here, and for that matter in Chicago a month from now, because the same concerns would arise at the DNC convention as well. But I think in terms I really honestly think, particularly when you see that New York Times photographers slow motion footage where you can actually see the bullet whizzing just in the image, at least to the right of him, was going past behind him. It looked like presumably by his right ear. You just think, boy, this is, as Reagan said, after he survived the attempt, he felt it was part of the divine plan, the DP. And I think for many of us, it'll feel like this was, one of those moments where maybe God's hand was involved with this. And I think not only for former President Trump, but for me and all the other delegates there's going to be a renewed sense of just how serious things are.
You're listening to News Radio 620 WTMJ. We are in breaking news coverage. An apparent assassination attempt earlier today on former President Trump. Governor Scott Walker joins us now. Vince Vitrano, Steve Scaffidi, and John Mercure on with you. John, go ahead.
Governor, good to talk to you. Thanks for making some time for us. Your friend Reince Priebus has been working really hard on this convention as the host committee chair for a very long time. How difficult would it be to make changes to the security zone, the fencing, the protocols, the procedures here 48 hours out from the convention's kickoff?
Oh, extremely challenging. I know they were having a gathering tonight, and Reince told me that they obviously canceled that just with all the uncertainty. That doesn't mean they're going to cancel the other official things, but I do think not only from the organizational standpoint of the Milwaukee Host Committee, the RNC proper, but just the Secret Service, and for that matter, local police. I was on Neil Cavuto's show this morning. It was one of the top questions he asked me about was security. I said I felt confident, in some ways even more so than maybe some do in Chicago, just because Milwaukee and Wisconsin, as you all know, our listeners know here, we've been a battleground state for so long that one of the advantages the DNC saw 4 years ago and now the RNC saw now was that local law enforcement has worked consistently, literally for years now, with presidential rallies, with visits of surrogates and family members and others. And so we're probably better equipped than just about any other location that was under consideration to have a smooth transition. Having said all that, I think in light of what happened today, yeah, there may be a look when clearly they're going to have to assess how in the world this alleged shooter was able to get, as it seems, at least as close as he was to the rally. So I do think it could have some effect on what the perimeter is, but I still feel confident that, again, local law enforcement, the police department, the sheriff's department, the state troopers, the agents, I saw the federal officials that were coming in, they're going to be in full force, and I feel confident we're going to have a good and a safe convention. It'll obviously have a more serious tone to it, but I mean, you saw the president's statement even just a little bit ago, and he is reflective mainly because of the concern he had for the one of the attendees of his rally that passed away, and the other who was seriously injured. But as we saw moments after the attempted assassination, this was a guy who was ready to stand up and fight back, and I think we're going to see more of that come Thursday.
I was going to ask
Governor,
you,
is there the chance that the
ahead,
Summerfest event could be canceled?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe under any other circumstance, but I literally think the moment I was just talking about told you everything you needed to know about whether or not he would allow something like that to be canceled. I mean, the fact that he didn't just get rushed out, he wanted people to know that even though clearly he had something, at least had nicked him, whether, we'll find out more details as to just how severe it was, but that he was not going to be whisked away without people let him know that he's a survivor. He's going to survive, and wanted apparently just gut check, strong reaction. So I don't, under any circumstance, see him wanting to not have this convention.
Governor, you know him as a president, but you also know him as a person. The fist to the crowd, the yelling of fight, even though he's already injured. What does that say to you about the person, Donald Trump, and candidate?
Oh, yeah, he just doesn't back down. I mean, I've seen it time and time again. I saw it when I was a competitor of his on the primary caucus cycle back 8 years ago. I saw it in the 2016 campaign when so many in the national media wrote him off. I saw it throughout his presidency. The pushback that he got from so many different directions. We've always seen it during the campaign and with all the legal maneuvers going on and everything else. This guy, say what you will. Obviously, I'm a supporter of his. I think it's a night and day difference between him and President Joe Biden on the issues. But just on a personality, say what you will about his personality. This guy is a fighter. I've always argued the way he wins in 16, and if he was going to win again in 24, is he's got to make sure voters in Wisconsin and elsewhere feel like he's a fighter for them and not just a fighter for the sake of fighting. But again, personally, we see this guy does not back down. Quitting is not in his vocabulary, and I think that's exactly. I think any of us, regardless of your party, would have completely understood if somebody ran off the stage after an attempt like this, not knowing what was next. But his gut reaction was to stand up and let people know that he was still there and he was still fighting and he wasn't going to back down. And that's 100% of what you see privately is what we saw there right on that stage.
Former Governor Scott Walker is with us on News Radio 620 WTMJ. Breaking news coverage, apparent assassination attempt against former President Trump. Governor, a thought. President Biden was out with remarks earlier today, said he wanted to contact directly and speak with former President Trump. Given the fact that these two guys, look, politics are politics, but these two gentlemen do not seem much to care for one another. They've said terrible, awful things about each other. If you were advising the president today, do you tell the president to take that call? And how would you advise him to react to the conversation if he truly believes it's heartfelt from the president?
Yeah, I think there's certainly it would make sense to take the call. I think the most important thing President Biden and I've seen others do this, but is to say and then repeat that you can have disagreements, you can even have extremely strong feelings about people's beliefs and their personality and the issues they stand for, but the level of just toxic, personal attacks. We've always seen some of that in politics, but it's gotten to again, sadly, I have a somewhat personal experience with that. I wasn't just targeted during the protests and the recall myself, my kids, my wife, supporters and others out there. So I know what it's like and how difficult that can be. It's one thing to be a target of a political attack. It's completely different when people make threats not only against you as a candidate or as an office holder, but against your family. And so I just think that's where all of us, any of us are engaged in politics and government, and this whole great debate, need to say we can have passion, we can have vigor, we can be worked up and pumped up about our ideas and our candidates. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the American tradition. It's one of the great things that there is no one permanent party that we can compete and not have to worry about retribution from the party in power, no matter who they are. But I also do think it's a good reminder, particularly in this growing age of social media, for people to examine, are you adding to the debate and the dialogue, or are you going out of your way to villainize people without talking about their ideas and the merits of the position. And I hope in that regard, not only for President Biden, like I said, there's been plenty of others. I saw Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, the governor of Pennsylvania, others put out strong statements. I hope that'll continue. And I hope as well that for those of us who are supporters of President Trump, that, we don't hear rhetoric of retaliation or anything in that regard, but rather say, whoa, it's time to, let's tone down the out of control rhetoric and let's get back to talking about what matters in America and why we think our candidates make the best case for a better country and a better state.
Former Governor. Oh, go ahead, John, if you had one more.
I was just going to ask you, Governor, you've had large outdoor rallies. You've had large security contingents. Can you see a scenario where the Secret Service says, we got to really think about holding these things indoor, even though they might be smaller, we can secure the area better? Can you see a scenario where a rally's not held in a setting like it was today?
Well, I think there's no doubt they can make that case. I mean, it's all, everything is a balance. But I do think, again, this isn't just something, President Trump has done. You had President Obama had big rallies. I remember on the square outside of the University of Wisconsin. I mean, you even go back to others along the way. And when you think of, ironically, you think of American history, Ronald Reagan's, the attempt on his life was coming out of a fairly secluded area outside of the Washington Hilton. You think of Wisconsin history, ironically, not too far from where the Pfizer Forum's at. Teddy Roosevelt was shot in Milwaukee and then went over and still delivered a speech after that before they took him off stage and treated him. So there's been changes made, yes, but I think you don't want to completely change the way Americans have gathered. If anything, I think the change that will be made is not to limit or not have them, but rather put much, much further perimeters around where these events can be held. Again, very preliminary. When I was governor, as Steve knows, having been a mayor, you don't want to jump to any conclusions until you know all the facts. But just looking at the images there, it seemed really, really surprising to me that there would be any sort of buildings that weren't secure, that were any sort of reasonable distance from where former President Trump was at. And I think, if anything, that's what will change. There'll be tighter attention not only to personal security, but the perimeter.
Former Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, live with us on News Radio 620 WTMJ. Governor, sure appreciate your time today, and we look forward to seeing you in the coming week at the convention.
Yeah, thank you. Prayers for everybody, and particularly for the one still, sounds like at least still struggling to make it through the night. So definite prayers there.
Thank you, Governor.
Take care.
Amazing stuff from the former governor of Wisconsin, and he alluded to my time as mayor. He came after our shooting. I had a lot of conversations with him about it. So he knows that there's violence out there. I thought he was on point though when he was talking about how things might change. I think everybody's in that state right now. What's going to change? I think there has to be an awareness that something is going to change. Here's what won't change. There will be an RNC. It will happen in Milwaukee. What that will look like, what that will feel like, even who might be there, that might change. I would not be shocked if some people say, you know what, I was thinking of going, I might not go. Now, obviously, delegates got to go. But there's always that corollary group of people that maybe don't need to be there. Maybe they go for the party. They might not go.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, John, you continue to ask your sources, and you ask the governor there about, these outdoor rallies. Is that going to be a thing in the past? It's not nuts to suggest that. I mean, what was standard protocol before President Kennedy was assassinated? He's driving in an open-air vehicle, riding on down the street, right? And that all changed. Secret Service protocol changed. Whether or not you have someone in open air changed. What is the route? How quickly do they drive? All that changed in an instant as a result of that incident. So it's not absurd to suggest there might be major changes to how we do presidential rallies and political rallies in the future. That said, our focus is on what changes tomorrow? What changes Monday through Thursday of next week?
I wonder how that Summerfest party will change tomorrow. 'Cause there has to be changes. I would imagine with that many people on the ground in that situation, open campus on a lake with a big bridge next to it. I know the bridge is closed, but still, lots of places
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they had to have. This is me saying this, even though this just occurred, and someone apparently outside the security perimeter. ABC News reporting it was 200 to 300 yards away from that podium was the shooter in this particular incident. So as I'm about to say, they have to have thought of that. I guess this is one that perhaps slipped through, but there must have been something in place for top of U.S. Bank building, top of 300 East, top of those other buildings that are anywhere near the Summerfest perimeter. There is a maritime order in place so that boat traffic will not be able to get right up on the grounds. The Hone Bridge, as you mentioned, Steve, is going to be closed during the duration of that event, well before it, well after. So these things have been thought of. I think they're still going to go.
Yes, of course. But here's the reality in our country. Violent events change our behavior and change the rules. When I was a kid, my dad worked at the airport. I could go to the airport, go to the gate, run around. What happened? We had hijackings. All of a sudden we had security, metal detectors, all the TSA stuff. Every violent act in a school changes the dynamics of the environment that it happens in. To think that this won't change the mindset going into what is already a very tense election, I don't think I'm going out on a limb there. That is part of the story now, and this, unfortunately, is part of the 2024 campaign. Here's the reality, though. They have 3+ months to campaign yet. Where are you going to do that? Where are you going to go?
They're not going to get rid of outdoor rallies. There's no way. I mean, when school shootings started, we didn't stop sending kids to school. When Ronald Reagan got shot outside the hotel, we didn't stop let candidates give speeches in hotels. The candidates would hate this. They won't stand for it. I think the Secret Service will say, we either need to cancel them or we need to set up a wider perimeter or we need to do something. And my guess is that's where they land, or they don't do it where there's buildings within 500 yards. They do it in the field. They do it somewhere. But the Donald Trump style rally, and it's not just Trump, Obama had these huge rallies too, are not going to go away. It's the way we do things that would be too much of a fundamental change. That will be the rub, though. That'll be the conversation. I think that'll be the tension between candidates and Secret Service.
Let me ask this question, because I've been thinking about this. This is obviously something that none of us wanted to see happen. But aggressive behavior, whether it's social media, whether it's in person, people yelling at you on the radio, whatever it is, right? Or the text line. Anger is up in this country. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
And as somebody who talks about politics Monday through Friday, 9 to 10 on WTMJ, these are some of the things that I worry about at night. And I said it before, and I'm going to say it again, and I don't know if John heard it or not, but when I left my house tonight to come here to cover this story with all of you, my wife Kathy says, please be careful. And when I get out of here tonight, I've got to walk to St. Kate's to get to my car. I'm going to be thinking about all that stuff. That's the reality that I'm thinking about tonight as somebody who's going to be here all week covering this very, very high-profile, very emotional, very aggressively political, hyper-partisan event. That's in my gray matter now, and I'm going to be thinking about that as I go about my days and nights.
Well, there's
I
something
think about it.
There's
I
something
think
that
about it
affects all of
the
us. You know, John, if we reported at the, I don't know, almost as a matter of interest, the low-flying helicopter over downtown the last several days.
I don't know how many people asked me about that as I was going about my business away from the show.
Standard operating procedure for a large-scale event, whether it's a political convention, whether it's the Super Bowl or a World Series. This is a part of the Nuclear Regulatory Administration or Nuclear Safety Administration in the U.S., where they come in, get a baseline of radiation in the area for fear of, if they see anomalies on that, could it be a sign of perhaps a dirty bomb? And we've talked about that, and there was no specific threat to Milwaukee or to this convention, but you talked about it sort of as a matter of interest. That's interesting. A moment like this brings to reality the points that you both made of you can't shrug your shoulders at it. The reason that there is that apparatus, that there is that level of security is because these things can happen. And so that's something that's brought it home, whether you've been interested in the economic impact or the visitors to Milwaukee or anything. As we've talked about this convention in the run-up last couple of years, it does put a bit of a target on Milwaukee and on southeast Wisconsin. And again, no specific threats to our area, but it's something that, yes, gives everybody pause.
You know, I saw the numbers for the Biden press conference the other night, and they were half of what the debate was. So I've been asking this question. I came out of the world of television research, did it for a long time, decades. Do you think this event, this shooting, this attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump increases, because you talked about this on your show the other day, how some people they're like tuned out. They may kind of tune in once in a while. They're not paying attention to this. Does this increase the interest in what's happening in Milwaukee, specifically when former President Donald Trump gets on a stage in Milwaukee this week? I think it has to. That's a moment.
I agree. I think it absolutely has to. It was already going to be a high-profile event. It's in prime time. I think it's a different level. I think one of the questions now will be, will Donald Trump take the stage on Monday? We know he'll be here Thursday. Some have suggested he might be on stage every night of the convention. I think it's more eyes. I think it's more attention. I think, are we going to see a scar on his face? Are we going to see him be a different tone of voice kind of guy when he talks for the first time? I think absolutely. It raises the profile to what was already going to be a really high profile.
John Mercure, Vince Vitrano, Steve Scaffidi, Greg Matzik, Wyatt Barmarpooley, Adam Roberts, Major Garrett's. We will continue the conversation. We're going to take a break here. Breaking news. The president, former President Donald Trump, is okay. He was injured at an event in Pennsylvania hours ago. We've been talking about it for 3 hours. And thanks to Governor Scott Walker for jumping on. He didn't have to do that. He had great insight on what that all feels like and probably more importantly, what it means for the RNC coming to Milwaukee this week. You're listening to 620 WTMJ.
You're listening to continuing coverage on WTMJ. Looking for a premium cocktail that's guiltless? Look no further than Carbless. They're ready-to-drink handcrafted vodka and tequila cocktails without carbs, sugar, or gluten, so you can indulge in something delicious without the guilt. With flavors like black raspberry, cranberry, and pineapple, Carbless has something for everyone. So why not give it a try when it comes to indulging in a premium ready-to-drink cocktail with Carbless? Liss is more. Find them online and at retailers near you.
Brewers 5 County Fridays are now Wisconsin First Fridays. All Wisconsin residents get half off Brewers tickets at the first Friday home game of each month. Check out the schedule and get yours at brewers.com/Wisconsin Fridays.
It's here on consignment from over 10,000 nationwide partners. From very high-end, distinctive furniture, unique antiques and original art, to tasteful home decor that can fit almost any budget. Premium home decor priced right at 25 to 40% off retail prices. This is Katie with Design Exchange, where discerning buyers with discriminating taste come to find premium home decor at a value. Design Exchange in Heartland and Pewaukee.
Design Exchange.
Smart interior designers know that what they'll see here is going to be almost impossible to find anywhere else, especially at our consignment prices. Premium home decor that's gently loved and close to new. And what we carry can raise the wow factor of anyone's home decor. This is Katie with Design Exchange, where discerning buyers with discriminating tastes come to find premium home decor at a value. Design Exchange in Heartland and Pewaukee.
Design Exchange.
You've probably heard about employee stock ownership plans before, but what separates Fifth Third Bank from others when it comes to these plans? A succession plan that benefits business owners and employees. Full and partial sales, second stage transactions, repurchase obligation financing, and seller note refinancing, ESOPs can offer tax advantages, increased liquidity, employee incentives, and overall diversification of net worth to help your company plan for the future. Fifth Third Bank, National Association. Custom solutions built around your goals. Member FDIC.
When the power goes out, your life is disrupted. Heat, air conditioning, refrigeration, phones, all gone. Be prepared for the next outage with a Generac home standby generator. After sensing a power outage, a Generac generator automatically restores your home's power, whether you're home or away. Power your life with a generator from Adams, Wisconsin's #1 rated Generac dealer. Adams provides sales, installation, maintenance, and 24/7 service from all locations. Learn why Adams is your best choice in providing power peace of mind. Visit adamspower.com today.
Breaking news coverage at 620 WTMJ. We got the whole crew here, all of the hosts and most of the newsroom, obviously the breaking news story. President Donald Trump doing a rally in Pennsylvania earlier this afternoon. I don't know the exact time. It was Butler, Pennsylvania. And I saw it shortly after CNN was covering some of this. And just the reaction of the president, you could see that he put his hand to his face and his ear. He fell quickly, Secret Service all over him. And then the amazing thing that I saw, and I want to get your thoughts about this because we asked the governor, former Governor Scott Walker, about this. He gets up as he's being escorted quickly to the black Suburban or whatever vehicle that was, fist in the air, yelling, "Fight," I think more than once. That is a moment, regardless of your politics, that anybody, the images are amazing, but the aggressive, I'm not, this is not taking me out. That was an impressive moment Thankfully, he's alive, but that was a moment in his campaign. Politics, yes, but wow, that was something.
Right. I mean, they're already making the ads. They're already making they were trying to make the case that Joe Biden is too old and, frail. You're going to see the ads with Donald Trump, with the American flag behind him, blood on his face, fist pumping in the air, surrounded by Secret Service being led off the stage. I mean, this is at the key of what he's already been campaigning on, and now this is just going to be part of that. It's going to be part of his lore.
Let me take you there. This is a witness account of someone who was at the rally describing what happened in those moments when President Trump appeared to have been shot.
I saw the gentlemen who wear the guns and the black. They came on and they said, okay, clear right, clear left. On 3, we're going to lift them. So they lifted President Trump up, and he said, I got to get my shoes.
Yeah, if you watched and listened along to any of the audio that occurred in those last moments, the president was surrounded by his security detail. They first shielded him, and once that apparently they became aware that, in their terms, the threat was neutralized, in other words, the shooter was dead or at least put down, they then attempted to move President Trump then into that Suburban, into his waiting vehicle, surrounded by half a dozen or so of his security detail there. Frightening thing to watch, regardless of your political perspective. Anyone that I was with today and folks who've talked with us have said, look, right, left, blue, red, this is a terrible and sad day for America. President Biden himself echoed those sentiments as well, saying that he wants to reach out personally to former President Trump and speak with him and does hope that he is okay.
John, I love these words from the Secret Service. Direct quote, the former president is safe. That's something, as Vince just said, doesn't matter your politics. That's what we needed to hear today.
And along with those words from the Secret Service were the chilling words, the shooter has been neutralized. And then we find out that he has been taken out.
In terms of the investigation, what we're learning from ABC News source reporting, they believe the shooter was outside this outdoor rally perimeter. So, when the president recently was in Racine, Wisconsin, it was right there on the lakefront. If any of you were there, you know exactly what that setting was like. It's a large outdoor area, but there's a hard perimeter where only people who are ticketed and only people who are searched by the Secret Service can get in. But there's obviously surrounding area. It's outside. What they're saying right now is that it appears the shooter was 200 to 300 yards away from the former president at the time of the gunfire, that at least 8 rounds were fired by that shooter from an AR-style rifle, and that person was perched on a rooftop adjacent to the rally venue. So it was outside of that security zone, but as we've discussed, John, you and I have covered a lot of presidential rallies, sitting presidents, candidates for president. Steve, you've been there as well as an invited guest. I mean, there is the interior perimeter, and then even that outside. I've seen them with my own eyes. Sharpshooters or snipers, as you might refer to them. Helicopters in the air. How this person could have found their way into that position is an open question that has to be answered soon, as with the biggest political event of the last several years happening starting tomorrow in Milwaukee.
Let me interject this point. I want to hear your reaction to this. So somebody they have a lot of respect for that knows their way around law enforcement said this to me. The Secret Service has suffered a lot of cuts in resources. Some staff, is that something we should be concerned about given what just happened today in Pennsylvania? I mean, I would not have thought that this type of thing could still happen in America with a candidate or a president because of all the things that have happened previously. John, does this surprise you?
It disappoints me, to hear that there's cuts in the Secret Service does a lot of things, but protecting the president of the United States, absolutely. And I go back to in 2008. John McCain picked Sarah Palin as his nominee, and the first stop that they make after the convention is they come to Cedarburg, Wisconsin. And you guys probably remember this.
Yep, right downtown.
Big old rally, downtown. Right downtown. Downtown, it was outside. People weren't screened. People didn't go through. There were buildings literally everywhere, and I was there at that. And those sort of events, can that take place again? I mean, with what happened today, this guy was a couple hundred yards away and had a line of sight. And I just found myself thinking about Cedarburg, where McCain raised Palin's hand and they stood on that stage in beautiful downtown Cedarburg.
I have a lot of friends who know a lot about firearms and guns. And one of the things they always tell me, because we've had this conversation, everybody thinks that 200 yards or 100 is a long distance. But with the firepower available to the average citizen now, and the ability to shoot pretty accurately, given all the technology, this is more and more easily done than it used to be. Used to have to be a sharpshooter. Not anymore. A lot of people practice with all their guns, all their firepower that they now own in their own arsenal. These types of things, whatever that perimeter used to be, it just got a heck of a lot bigger based on what happened today.
So I find myself thinking about how far away that was. Let's say it's 300 yards. That's 300 Lambeau Fields away from where the president was standing. And then I find myself thinking about how impressive that within seconds, the Secret Service neutralized that guy that was 300 yards away. That's crazy.
You've asked the question about what possibly could change for the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. The big welcome event, sort of an unofficial kickoff, is tomorrow night on the Summerfest grounds. That was not already open to the public. You have to be a ticketed guest or a delegate or one of the other operatives to attend. That said, there's that, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at Fiserv Forum in the area around their major events. Speaking of major, WTMJ's Greg Matzik ran into a frequent guest of yours, John, on Wisconsin's Afternoon News. From CBS News, Major Garrett.
Nothing to suggest this is inhibiting either the former president or those around him from having this event go on as planned. I asked Ryan Priebus, do you imagine that whatever was planned before this event in Butler, Pennsylvania, in terms of security, will that be enhanced? He said, I don't know. I haven't heard yet. They've got a lot of other priorities to attend to first. I said, quite naturally, there's a sequential thing. But I think it's safe to assume that something will be re-examined in light of this as to the perimeter here in Milwaukee. There's a hard perimeter, as you know. There's a soft perimeter. The soft may also become hard now. We don't know. But I have to believe there will be at least a thorough relook and maybe some changes, some adaptations.
Major Garrett joined Greg Matzik. Brilliant interview by Greg. And basically, Greg ran into him on the streets of Milwaukee because obviously Major Garrett and CBS and all the networks, what do we got, 15,000 journalists coming to town. They're all preparing for this. I cut you off, John. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to tag team with Major Garrett because my sources have been telling me the last couple of hours that impromptu meetings are taking place right now about whether or not we do two things. We extend the yellow zone to bigger than it is now, and we take the existing yellow zone, security zone, and make that the red zone. Another thing they're discussing, the Secret Service gets to decide whether or not guns are allowed into these security zones. The yellow zone right now, we've all talked about this, guns are allowed inside of there. That could change. That could change come Monday. And then the other thing that my sources are telling me is that they're looking at the entry points. We've all memorized that have to be in the zone, the 5 places you can enter in. And then there are fewer places where you can enter into the red zone, the heart of the district. They're looking at all of that. They're considering changing that. They're considering making those locations, less of those vacations, I should say, locations than there are right now. And they're considering putting additional layers on the screening of vehicles and people and adding more time to that. All those meetings are taking place now. The problem they have is there just isn't much time until Monday gets here to implement those changes.
Here's another one that I just got from a source, media company. Listen to this. We cannot wear our credentials, media credentials, anywhere outside until we get to the security gate. No media branding to be shown at the convention or anywhere in Milwaukee. That's from a media company. They're deciding to do that. They may not be getting directed. They're deciding to do that. Now, whether that's a risk, I guess, a reaction to the media's presence, I'm not sure where that's going, but interesting comments from a source that I just got.
And one of my guys also just told me, as we've had this discussion, he thinks, we were talking about outdoor rallies, he thinks it will become very prevalent that there is ballistic glass at these rallies, that basically the candidate will be inside something very similar to what the Pope drives around in.
Yeah, the Pope mobile, yeah.
Yeah, that's all ballistic glass.
Yeah.
So maybe there's still the big outdoor rallies, but the candidate is surrounded by ballistic glass.
None of us expected this story. We were all doing our Saturday thing. I was watching roofers on the top of my house. John, I don't know what you were doing. Vince was at a graduation party, which is not uncommon this time of year. And here we are presented with a story like this. Former President Donald Trump running to be president again, 47th president of the United States after Joe Biden, if he's successful in November. And then this happens. From a 40,000-foot view, I think that the going sort of idea was that Donald Trump was on the uptick and Joe Biden was falling. Polling suggests that. The public sentiment suggested that. either of you have a sense where this story goes in that sense for shaping the results and the votes in November?
Oh, this helps Donald Trump. This is not good news for Joe Biden. This is weird as it sounds, but follow me on this, is only good news for Donald Trump. And it's because of the visuals. It's because of the images. He's been trying to make the story that he is more vigorous and vibrant than Joe Biden. And there are images now that we will all have seared into our minds of Donald Trump being shot, blood on his face, rising up, literally pumping his fist in the air and walking off the stage. I just don't see a scenario where this hurts him at all. And the Biden people smartly won't want to talk about the politics of this. That would be inappropriate. And he has said all the right things so far today. This is not good for them from the political standpoint at all.
I'll tell you what, too, a lot of speeches are being rewritten tonight.
Yes. Wow.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't
the
think about
Monday
that.
speeches, the
They were all
Tuesday, the
printed up,
Wednesday,
ready to
the
go.
Thursday. Folks have been practicing them, and a lot of those speeches are being torn up and rewritten tonight, where many of them might have contained the narrative that we've discussed for the last 2 weeks. The current president's fitness to be in office. Is he going to even be the candidate? Will he be forced out? Will he step aside? The news conference that featured some stumbles once again by the president. All of that goes away immediately. I'm not saying it's gone forever, but that's no more the topic of conversation today, tomorrow, or even into the convention. It's all about what just happened here.
Vince, go ahead.
Vince,
go ahead, John.
Vince, you raise such a great point, Vince, because we've been talking about the narrative of Republicans trying to paint Joe Biden as weak and feeble. Part of the reason they don't need to do that today and tomorrow and Monday anymore is because we have the antithesis of that in their mind with the pictures of Donald Trump shot in the ear, blood on his face, standing tall, pumping his fist, and 2 days later, potentially walking onto a stage in Milwaukee. That not only shows how strong and vibrant they believe he is, but they can do that without even having to say Joe Biden's name now.
We'll take one final break. Breaking news coverage of the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. We'll have our final thoughts. Vince Vitrano, John Mercure, Steve Scaffidi. You're listening, of course, to 620 WTMJ.
There's an amazing supper club in Wisconsin Dells, Ish Nala, nestled among the pines and perched above the sandstone bluffs of Mirror Lake. The beauty, the history, the service, the food, the fun. Hi, this is Bob Prosser, owner of Ishnala Supper Club in Wisconsin Dells. I've been a part of Ishnala since 1973, and I am so proud to continue the tradition that began in 1953. Why not enjoy a brandy old-fashioned in one of our bars, each with a spectacular view overlooking Mirror Lake, or just relax before or after dinner on one of our outdoor decks. Our Ishnala chefs have prepared your favorites: 24-ounce ribeye, cold water lobster tails, North Atlantic salmon, and of course, Ishnala's roast duck. Thank you for making Ishnala Wisconsin's favorite supper club, where the only thing we overlook is Mirror Lake. I'm Bob Prosser, and I want to serve you.
Breaking news coverage, 620 WTMJ, Steve Scaffidi, Vince Vitrano, John Mercure on the phone. We have covered the breaking story since it happened. Donald Trump, former President of the United States, candidate for president in November, shot at, assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. The great news is, spokesperson for Trump and Secret Service, the president is fine. He's thanked law enforcement. He certainly offered condolences to the victims of that shooting, and we'll find out a lot more about that. I want to get final thoughts from everybody. Now, John, you first. What this day means in our nation's history, but let's be honest, we're going to be covering the RNC, what it means for that week in Milwaukee.
Let me give you a final national thought and a final Milwaukee thought. First, the national thought. There is the possibility that Donald Trump will attend a funeral for one of his supporters the week of the convention. Can you imagine the news coverage if, let's just pick the day, on Wednesday, Donald Trump is attending the funeral of one of his supporters who was shot at one of his rallies, and he's there in the morning, and that's all over everywhere. And then he comes to Milwaukee that evening, comes back to Milwaukee to conduct business at the convention. And locally, we need to all stay tuned because this has changed the tone of the rally in Milwaukee, the convention in Milwaukee. Scott Walker said it. I think the words he used was, it's more serious now. The tone will be different. I think it'll still be celebratory It'll still be the images of Milwaukee, but there's no doubt about it. This changes the tone of what we will see in Milwaukee.
I'll go second, and then Vince can wrap it up and take us to the top. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. This is important stuff, and certainly one of those critical moments in our nation's history. I will say this. I hope it causes a reset. Not in the politics of it, but in the way that we treat each other, the way we talk about politics, the anger that we've brought to politics. Again, we don't know the details yet, and this may have just be the work of a twisted individual who has mental health issues. We don't know yet. But at the end of the day, I would hope that at least we can reset the dialogue, the discourse, and the civility meter so that we can sort of get back to policy issues. I know that we've sort of drifted away from that. We're talking about people acting like crazy individuals and senility and all that. There are issues that are important in this country, like taxes, the old stuff, taxes, and our international policy. All that stuff matters. I hope we can get back to that. Vince, you have some audio I know you want to play from the current president, current occupant of the White House, and then you give us your final thoughts.
Let's do that first. About an hour ago, President Biden, in a short address to the nation on what occurred earlier in the day, the assassination attempt against former President Trump, just a little bit of that.
And he says, I'm grateful to hear that he's safe and doing well. I'm praying for him and his family and for all those who were at the rally as we await further information. The president goes on to say, Jill and I are grateful to the Secret Service for getting him to safety. There's no place for this kind of violence in America. We must unite as one nation to condemn it.
Karen Travers from ABC News summarizing some of the president's remarks. Let's hear from the former president himself, Donald Trump, in a post on Truth Social, his social media platform. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt that bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America. We have not heard from in video or audio from former President Trump, but that is a statement that he posted on Truth Social within the hour.
All set? All right, so Greg Matzek had maybe the interview of the night. He had Major Garrett, who he saw working downtown Milwaukee, get ready for the RNC. First of all, great gets. And I want to get your final thoughts on what this story means to you. You're going to be covering this all week along with the rest of us.
Yeah, so I'm very curious, like everybody else, just to see how things will change if there is a soft and hard perimeter and zone, or maybe if it's all one big hard zone. That makes it a little more challenging to get in and out of. We will see. I know there was talks about having guns inside the perimeter, and perhaps that will change now. I mean, God, you couldn't even bring a tennis ball or a bottle of water into there previously. So we'll be very curious to see how the security plan changed. I do have a source inside law enforcement who could not tell me his role during the upcoming RNC, but I asked what he thought could change, and he said pretty much everything. It'll be curious. We may need to go back to the drawing board about where we are, what we do, and where people are planted, which I thought was a very interesting line. But in talking to Major, after his conversations with Reince Priebus, his hope is that the events will go on as necessary. Security could change dramatically, but the events could go on as planned.
Let me leave you with this. Spoke earlier with the delegate to the convention, County Executive Paul Farrow, who said that there may be even greater of a spotlight on Milwaukee in these coming days, and that Milwaukee will rise, Wisconsin will rise to that challenge, and they're going to put on a great convention. Different as it may be in light of what happened today, but a great convention nonetheless.
Gentlemen, thanks for letting me on. Let me hang on. I'm not a journalist, but I was awed by the work that you did. And to Wyatt Barmore-Pooley, Adam Roberts, Greg Matzek, Major Garrett, John Mercure, Vince Vitrano, and I'm probably forgetting some other names. That was brilliant news production on 620 WTMJ.
Hey, boaters! Some call them oddball parts, but we call them a huge part of our inventory. Dave Doro here from Kendor Marine. With thousands of boat parts and supplies stacked right here in our store, you won't have to look elsewhere. If you need it, chances are we got it, along with expert advice to get your job done right.